Starting to go off. Welcome everybody. This is December 4th, 2023, and this is a work session of the Billings City Council. We've only got one subject on our agenda tonight. There should be copies of the agenda in the back if you don't have one, but that is public safety. As you know, public safety has been the top priority of the Billings City Council and administration for several years, but the topic has taken on renewed urgency because of an unprecedented spate of 5 fatal homicides that occurred in 4 separate shootings during the 12-day period between October 28th and November 9th. There have also been several serious but non-fatal shootings in the last month. The average age of the victims of the 5 recent homicides was only 18. And the average age of the 4 people who've been charged so far in connection with these murders is also only 18. Ironically, these tragic deaths occurred in a year when we have actually seen a significant decline in violent crime. According to Chief St. John's August 21st semi-annual report to the City Council, violent crime in the first half of this year was down significantly from the first half of 2022, 18.3% from the peak in 2021. But one death is too many. And the reality is that even though our crime numbers have been coming down out of the COVID-19 pandemic, they're still higher than historical and national averages. Tonight, we're here to learn and to discuss what we can be doing to change that reality for the better. We're fortunate to have a number of experts with us who have experience in many different aspects of the criminal justice system. And we very much appreciate their joining us tonight, especially since several of them came from Helena and other cities around Montana. Our format tonight will be a bit different from a typical City Council meeting. One thing, you'll need to talk loudly, since we do not have microphones for any of you, and Community 7 TV is broadcasting this meeting as our other meetings, and that what I call the pizza box in the middle of the room is the microphone. So talk loudly, make sure you're kind of addressing that, and keep your voice up so other people can hear. We will not be making any formal decisions tonight. Instead, the goal is primarily to listen and to learn from our experts, ask good questions, and kick around good ideas. City staff around the room will be taking careful notes so that the new City Council that take office in January can refine and flesh out possible action items early next year. Since the goal is to brainstorm and have an open and informal conversation, I would encourage all of us to make our comments concise and resist digging too deep into any one subject or criticizing what others have to say, lest it stymie open communication. I'd also encourage us to listen in particular and engage with our outside experts as much as possible. We really appreciate their presence, and this might be a one-time opportunity to learn from some of them, especially if they're from out of town. This is not the only opportunity that the City Council and the public will have to discuss the subject of public safety in Billings. The city administrator and his staff have identified 10 different subject areas relating to public safety that are listed in the staff report for tonight's meeting. The plan tonight is to address 4 of those and then come back to the other 6 with the new City Council early next year. That means we won't get to everything, not by a long shot. And one of those 6 subject areas that's very important to the topic, or is the topic of crime prevention, which is not specifically on the agenda for tonight. So in just a minute, I'm going to ask, after we have some introductions, our City Administrator Chris Kukulski to identify those 4 items that are on the agenda and explain how they are being defined for tonight's discussion. Concerning our time schedule for tonight, we could talk all night long about any one of these topics. But for the benefit in particular of our guests and the public, I'll suggest some targets. You know, if we spend 30 to 40 minutes on each of the 4 topics, and we have about 30 minutes of preliminaries and public comment, and that might be light, that would allow us to conclude our meeting somewhere between 8 and 8:30. That would be 2.5 to 3 hours. I'll try to keep track of our time and let you know when we're approaching those 30-minute or so time limits on each topic. Just to do the math for you, there's about 30 of us around this table, so as a reminder, if everyone speaks just once on a 30-minute topic, that means each one of us will have 60 seconds. In just a couple of minutes, I'll invite public comment on any item, whether it's on our agenda or not, consistent with our agenda. And then after our discussion on public safety, there'll be another opportunity for the public to comment on that subject. But since each commentator will only be allowed to comment once on the same subject matter, if you want to comment on the issue of public safety, you might consider waiting until you've heard the discussion by the experts and the city council members. But if you need to go and you can't wait for what will probably be a couple hours before we get to that time for public comment, you should feel free to comment during the first public comment period in just a few minutes. Speaking of having to go, the bathrooms are right through that door and then to the right. This is an informal meeting, so if anyone would like, you should feel free to use the facilities whenever you want to. Unless it looks like we're getting close to wrapping up around 7:30, we'll probably take a break around that time, consistent with our usual practice. So those are some of the preliminaries. Again, I thank everybody for being here, everybody around the table, our many members of the public. I'm going to turn it over to our city administrator, Chris Kukulski, to introduce these topics and say a few other things. But before I do, let's go around the room, around the table rather. And again, because there's about 30 of us, I'm just going to ask you to tell us your name and your position. You'll have an opportunity later to go into more depth. So why don't we go around clockwise, and with that, I'll start with Superintendent Garcia.
Erwin Garcia, Superintendent, SD2.
Stephen Crawford with Montana Department of Justice, Division of Criminal Investigation, Narcotics Bureau.
Mike Linder, Yellowstone County Sheriff's Office.
Rich St. John Police.
Jesse Lazlovich, United States Attorney for the District of Montana.
Danny Chiriki, City Council.
Denise Joyce, City Council.
Tom Ripsis, City Council.
Jessica Fair, District Court Judge.
Scott Twido, County Attorney.
Pam Purinton, Ward 4 Council.
Katie Weston, Department of Corrections.
Stephen Hurd, Chairman of the Parole Board.
Sheila Kohler, Municipal Court Judge.
Chantel Anderson, Deputy City Attorney.
Ed Gillick, Billings City Council, Ward 1.
Tina Hoger, Code Enforcement Manager.
Wyeth Friday, Planning and Community Services, including code enforcement.
Pepper Valdez, Fire.
Mike Boyack, City Council.
Christopher Nelson, District 26.
Ben Halverson, Deputy City Attorney.
Katie Nash, Billings Police Department.
Liz Stanton, AmeriCorps member working with Kate.
Jennifer Owen, City Council. Gina Dahl, City Attorney.
Kevin Eflin, Assistant City Administrator and Tech Guy tonight, apparently.
Chris Kukulski, City Administrator.
And I'll also mention that Councilmember Neese Roy Neese is with us. Is he on board? Okay. And Councilmember Neese, it's going to be hard for me to see you. We'll count on Kevin to recognize you if you want to say something. If we're not seeing you, feel free to just interrupt and make yourself known. So with that, I'm going to turn, I'd say the microphone over to Chris, but we don't have it. So Chris, it's all yours.
All right, thank you. And I apologize for some of the repetitiveness here. I've got a statement I want to kick us off, and then we'll roll from there. So thank all of you for joining us tonight for this crucial public safety roundtable. I want to extend my gratitude to all members of the community and our partners in the criminal justice system who are here for this conversation. I've also asked Superintendent Garcia to make a few introductory comments as he's been learning about our community over the past several months. Then we'll immediately dive into the roundtable discussion with the goal tonight of identifying specific action items. We're not gonna debate them, but getting ideas on the table. In the first of the year, once the new council is sworn in, we'll be working deeper with these strategies and the ideas that come out tonight. So we're looking for conversations about action steps in the criminal justice system as we all interface together. The fact that violent crime rates are down, as the mayor said, frankly is irrelevant. Citizens are not interested in excuses and as to why the criminal justice system is not working, whether it's at the city, county, state, or federal level. The ages of our kids who are victims and perpetrators of violent crime is repulsive. And I think that's what you heard from the mayor. I think when I'm talking to people in the community, when our phones are ringing, that is something, what are we gonna do about that? Our systematic problems are perpetuated by easy illegal access to alcohol, drugs, and weapons, pushed by cartels, peers, and adults, and aided by a lack of community involvement. What we are seeing has been manifesting in our community for decades. Violent criminals overwhelmingly come from homes with family violence and trauma. Our community must decide how we will respond. Will we take a thoughtful, deliberative measures for both short-term and long-term solutions, or are we going to hope that it gets better by hiring a few more police officers and then blaming one another when things get worse? No neighborhood or socioeconomic group in Billings is immune to what's happening. As we all know, suicide rates in Montana are amongst the worst in the country, and now our kids are joining gangs and shooting one another or having drive-by shootings instead of seeing a hopeful future in their faith, in adult role models, and hard work. It is not too late. We are still a relatively small city. We all remember when homicides were rare and citizens felt safe enough to leave their cars and their homes unlocked. It is also good news that our citizens are asking, if not frankly demanding, what is being done, and they're asking how can they help. We have a draft set of objectives and action steps to improve safety and reduce crime. As this conversation takes place, as the mayor said, we've got staff who will be taking notes. This is being recorded. We'll pour back over it and get the information for future conversations. Tonight's focus is on family violence, intervention and diversion, violent and property crime, and downtown safety. Other areas, as the mayor said, we'll talk about in the future. And again, I just appreciate the attendance. I appreciate the feedback. I want to turn it over to Dr. Garcia, and then we'll jump into our first conversation about family violence. And Ben Halverson is going to give us a brief introduction there. We got some brief intros on each of the 4 subjects. And then the expectation is that we have a dialogue at this stage. Dr. Garcia.
Good afternoon, everyone. Erwin Garcia, Superintendent. So I wanted to share some data with you that I hope can help us connect some of the things that are happening in our city. Graduation rates in Billings Public Schools is 86%. But if you're Native American, that is only 69%. If you're African American, it's less than 69%. If you're Hispanic, it's about 69%. From the beginning of the school year to now, we've had about 90 students that have dropped out from the school systems. Let me go back to that number, 90. In January, we project 150 students will have dropped out from the school system, only in Billings Public Schools. We went back to check, of course, to investigate a little bit of the background of the students or the people involved in these crime acts, and there's a commonality: dropouts. And people say, well, we don't have money to do this, to do that, to raise this program. We either pay now or we pay later. Because those 150 kids that we lose from our system will show up somewhere. And unfortunately, we see it. Not all students were from Billings Public Schools, but yes, most of those students were dropouts. So we are bringing, we created something in October, Project Engage. I was so disappointed and so saddened by the number of dropouts. We invited 90 dropouts for lunch with their parents and their families. We had a nice dinner for them. We had counselors, principals, adult education. We got 30 back. 30 kids back. But if you see the stories and you see their faces, minorities, morbidly poor, in many instances, grandparents taking care of the kids because their parents are no longer to be found. And those kids matter. We have 30 back, but we still have 60 more to go. So Project Engage was a success, but it's not the solution to this problem. Of course not. It's not the only solution. It's a little rain to this situation, but we're thinking on a opportunity school. An opportunity school is a proficiency-based program for dropouts. So instead of waiting for the kids to drop out, we're going to go back to the data. And if you are in high school on your first year and you have 0 credits, we have to do something for you. You have to enroll in a pathway. So we have the location. Some of the trustees are here and they're very supportive for the possibility of having a centric location where we can have a proficiency-based program for kids that are at risk of dropping out. Those kids will learn technology. Those kids will learn how to become teachers. We're going to create pathways within that program. But for that program, it's preventive. Yes, it's just a contribution. We will be rescuing kids out of dropouts. And if we have 150, if we can drop that to 75 or 50 kids, we're making a huge impact. So I hope that this resonates with you, this little commercial, because that's where we headed. Opportunity school for our kids, especially the most vulnerable.
Thank you, Dr. Garcia. Mayor, do you want to go to public comment and then?
That's what we'll do. Yeah, thank you very much, Superintendent. I don't know what to call you, everybody here. Before we talk to the table, let's give an opportunity for public comment. Again, we will have an opportunity for public comment on the issue of public safety after our discussion, but that may be for a couple hours. If you would like to be heard on any topic on our agenda or not, this will be an opportunity. I'm just going to ask you to come to the podium, tell us your name, keep your comments to 3 minutes, and tell us your address or your ward number, whichever. And yeah, go ahead and make a little line so we know how many people are going to be here. And a few people is good enough, and you can always get up later. So again, we just need your name and keep your comments to 3 minutes. Do you have anybody timing? We'll be a little timing, or do some timing, and we'll say something when your 3 minutes is up. Go ahead.
Catherine Carr, 2815 4th Avenue South. Mayor and council and other city leaders. Many of our neighbors, your constituents, are sleeping out in the cold and winter storms right now, and are also in the elements when organizations such as St. Vincent de Paul and Salvation Army aren't open. Many of our neighbors who are struggling anyway with physical and mental illnesses and addictions are struggling now just to stay alive. They need genuine low-barrier shelter. Billings needs a genuine low-barrier shelter as well to keep a healthy, or to become a healthy and safe community. And currently our community does not have a low-barrier shelter, one that the community can rely on to care for the most vulnerable among us. The Montana Rescue Mission offers only an emergency shelter, not a low-barrier shelter to our neighbors. According to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, an emergency shelter is any facility the primary purpose of which is to provide temporary or transitional shelter for the homeless in general and or for specific populations. MRM does this. It provides temporary or transitional shelter to our unhoused neighbors who meet certain criteria that seem to change day to day. And as I understand that, emergency shelter is only for 14 days and no more, unless the unhoused person is found to be improving their lives, changing their lives for the better, however that is determined at that point. They have 14 days to get their lives together, and there is no more shelter, or there is no more shelter. Again, as I understand it, that's a huge barrier to shelter. Now, perhaps I got this all wrong last winter when I thought I heard the leadership of MRM saying that they would provide low barrier shelter. In fact, that they would provide the low barrier shelter for our community. Did I not hear them correctly? Even in city council meetings in front of you, I thought they said that. And yet now, when winter weather is taking hold, MRM is qualifying, limiting, setting up barriers to the shelter they offer. And consequently, many of our neighbors, your constituents, are sleeping outside. Apparently, no other nonprofit or for-profit organization is going to step up and provide consistent, safe, and reliable low-barrier shelter this year. Apparently, no wealthy organization is going to do that. No inspired and able to fundraise person or persons are going to be able to do this, apparently. Likewise, no community of faith is stepping up to provide shelter. So it's falling on you, our leaders, to make a safe space for our neighbors and to use your influence, your knowledge, your creativity,
And Catherine, your
power,
time is up.
and possession and compassion to organize that shelter. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
My name's Mark. Basically, came here to ask a couple questions and make some statements. From Homeland Security, I got some information that not 300, but 10,000 immigrants have been invited into the community. Is that true or not?
Mark, we don't get into a dialogue during this. We'll try to answer that later, but in this case, I don't want there to be any doubt. That's not true. Go ahead.
Thank you. I really appreciate that coming from a very populated city. The new offices, did we, the taxpayers, pay $28 million for those that could have been free? Question. Number 3, are there plans to revisit this $150 million park fiasco that got voted down? So those are questions that I, as a citizen here, am asking. Number 4, what is your ratio of police officer to citizen in this city? Because there are numbers across this city. I know that from a 32-year career in law enforcement, from being on the streets to a chief of police position. Okay, I'm watching the violent crime in this city, okay, and I think we're driving as a city to symptoms, not the source of the problem here. And I know some of the things are going to be unpopular, but as Mickey Mouse says, oh well. Okay. These are things that people that I've talked to are afraid to talk to you about. As a law enforcement professional, Part 1 crime, people don't feel safe here. And that's across the board. I don't think it has anything to do with the police officers. I've talked to plenty of them. They're fine people. I don't think it has anything to do with your chief. I've had lunch with him a couple times. He's smart and he's a good man. I personally drive to the mayor and city council on this. What are you doing with resources and what are you shooting at? Because it looks like you're way off base to me. Traffic is bad. Rarely do I see a patrol car on the streets. High visibility, low yield is what stops crime. If you're hard to see them on the streets, and yet we're building new offices for city council, looking at parks and some of the other stuff where our money is going to, I'm saying you're shooting at the wrong target, possibly. I don't know. When I left my career, I hoped I never had to talk about stuff like this again. But I see you headed toward LA right now. And I hope to God it doesn't happen. I work with gangs down here. And the same crap that goes on down there is going on up here.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Sorry.
Hi, my name is Katie Harrison, 2901 6th Avenue South. I'm here as a last resort, and I really hoped it wouldn't have to come to this, but being that I think all the people that might be able to help my situation are in this room, I'm hoping this is the last time I'll have to go to sleep worrying about my own personal safety. Everyone in the city council knows, and I really hope that the police chief knows, that a man emailed the city council and mayor threatening to bring a gun to my house. And it wasn't to show off how nice his gun collection is, okay? The emails to city council is public record, so obviously everyone here can look the email up and see for yourself. This was back in early October. I filed a restraining order. It was granted. His guns were not taken away in the order of protection. Why would a judge grant an order of protection seeing that someone is possibly threatening someone specifically with a gun and you don't take the gun away? He literally verbatim said he is going to bring a gun to my house. Someone was shot and killed across the street from my kitchen. Not long after that, from my kitchen door while I was cooking. My hearing for deciding whether this guy is going to have a permanent order of protection has been pushed back 3 times. This man still hasn't been served his restraining order. When I called the sheriff's office a few days ago, they didn't even know that one had been granted. This guy lives in a very specific part of the county city where you have to coordinate a city and a county person. That's 2 people. It takes 3 months to coordinate 2 people to make sure I don't get shot. This was before the string of shootings took place. I've joined a peace collective. I meet every Sunday. I'm trying to do what I can to help others. But I also want to make sure that I stay alive in the meantime. This guy needs to be served. It needs to happen ASAP. I don't want to be one of the next victims. This is my plea to make sure that whatever has to get done gets done, that this man is served, and that I have my hearing and it doesn't get pushed back 3 more months. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. There will be follow-up on that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
My name is William. My father was a pre-offender affairs special agent, and I did really good. I've been working, but I fell on hard times. I have epilepsy, and I'm homeless. And I go to every organization to try to help me, but they put me in that category. You guys put me in that category. Homeless. I do drugs, but I work. But where am I supposed to live? Montana Housing doesn't help me. I went to every organization. Where are you to help me? I'm a citizen. Where's my Native American delegates? Where's Crow? Where's Cheyenne? Where's all the people that's supposed to be here with us to help us? Do you invite them? I don't know. This is the first time I've ever done this. But I work hard. I really do. My son went to Afghanistan. He came back, thank God. And I'm trying to help him too. But where's your help? I'm living on the streets. I work. But where am I supposed to sleep? I don't have the money. I save up. Cost of living is high. I just need you guys to and then when I ask for organizations, you know, they tell me our hands are tied. You guys could cut those. It's like slavery. Cut them. Help us, the ones that work, the ones that are sitting out there. I sit here, I don't know where I'm going to sleep tonight. I don't like the mission. But where am I going to sleep? You're all sitting in your suits. I used to do that because I worked hard. Where am I going now? Thank you.
Thank you.
How do you follow that? Thank you. My name is Gary Buchanan. I've been in business 44 years. I started at the Granite Tower in 1978. I first want to thank the mayor and the city council, the superintendent, and others for this meeting and folks from the state. Crime has reached a crisis point with Billings businesses, and importantly, the image statewide of Yellowstone County. There are two elephants in the room, and I say this carefully and hope it's not too harsh. For me, my daughter helped type up the notes. She says, it sounds like Groundhog Day. Several of us were in the northern before the pandemic, 3-4 years ago, and we talked about the need for a jail, for a larger jail. The county commissioners blew us off. Just a few weeks ago, the county commission said they took exception to the mayor and the city manager's views on the jail, blowing us off again. And when the interest rates were low, when we first talked about it, interest rates were 2, building costs were half. 4 years later, frankly, we haven't done a damn thing. So I take exception to nothing being done at the county level on the jail situation. The second thing at Groundhog Day, I've called probation and parole the last 3 or 4 years to talk about the state dumping, and I hate to use the word, but dumping parolees on Billings and Yellowstone County. We have far more parolees dumped on in Billings and Yellowstone County than we have criminals. It's disproportionate. I showed Governor Gianforte in my alley a few years ago 20 parolees living in one facility behind my office with 2 bathrooms. Now that's neglect to the parolees. So we have to get a handle on this. Years ago, I chaired the Board of Crime Control. We worked hard, the State Board of Crime Control, on radios. At one point, we had radios were separate, and now it's funded joint dispatch. But years ago, Harold Hanser and the City Council said something that I think needs to be resurrected. If the city and county can't solve the problem, we looked at it from the Board of Crime Control. We would have had 10 more cops on the beat every beat session if we consolidated the city and county law enforcement. We might be there. We might be there in terms of solving the problem. So, for those of us that are tired of Groundhog Day, please proceed. Mayor, thank you for holding me.
Thank you. Other public comment, please come forward and make a little line here so we don't have transition time.
Good evening, my name is Alba Pimentel. I'm the chapter chair of Moms for Liberty. I'm also originally from California. A little background on me, I am a daughter of immigrants. I do have a brother who's currently a gang member of the Los Angeles County. A lot of what I see here really concerns me, especially with our minority kids in school. You heard the stats earlier, and I really urge community leaders, parents, and everybody to come together and take a look at what's going on in our educational system. There is some great changes happening now. Thank you, Mr. Garcia. I see a lot of the great work that you're bringing into our district, but we need help, is what I'm seeing. We need help from the community. We have books in there. We have material. One of the books is called Assassination Classroom. You can imagine what that entails. Some of us don't agree with that material. Some of us do. We have no problem if that is available here at this public library. But when you have children and we're facing these issues in our community, I think even our law enforcement officers would like it if we would reduce even promoting crime to our children in schools. When we look at the children that are reading, we have children with low reading scores, low math scores, and we really need to help those children. We need to bring back programs for the community that are going to help our children. and we need everybody to come together. Like I said, I do have currently a brother who is a gang member and will probably end up in the streets like the gentleman that was here today. It's a really sad deal that for those that have family members that are living that struggle. And I do sympathize and empathize with that today. So in order for us to stop that from happening in our community in our future, our children do become adults. And we need to start creating that change as of today. And it takes all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
I'm Tanya Ludwig. I'm 378 Jefferson Street, Billings, Montana, 59101. I can relate to some of this stuff, especially the gang involvements, the issues with our kids today. I'm a victim. I lost my son in 2020. Some of you guys already heard this story, but some of you guys haven't. And I want to let you guys know what happened. My son was 22 years old. He got mixed up with this individual who was in a gang. This individual moved here from California because he had trouble in California. So he moved here. This kid moved in my house for a short time. He was selling marijuana out of my house. I alerted the police about it. I got an eviction notice served on him. Get a restraining order on him and my son. I let my son come back for 20 days after the restraining order was up on him. Had the restraining order put on my son, on his buddy, longer. When they were staying in a motel room, I found out from another girl that was staying with them. This individual was taking my son's money from his paychecks. He was beating him whenever he stuck up for himself. He was selling my son's medical marijuana. He was raided. This individual was raided. I alerted people that he was heading to California. Nothing was done to stop him. My son was convinced to go to California from his so-called buddy. And my son was Eric. He grew up here. He went to California. He was working. Again, his buddy was taking the money from him. July 19th, 2020, I get a call. I was in a Little Caesars Pizza, getting a delivery. It was from the Riverside County Coroner's Office. I'll never forget this call. They asked me if I knew Eric Ludwig. And I said yes. And they told me he was dead. My son was working, sitting in between two bushes, when he was pinned under a car. While he was pinned under the car, that car came to the side of his head. And she went through a building with him under the car. She had the breakdown of cocaine in her system, and she had marijuana in her system as well. We have issues that we have to fix around here. We have to all come together and realize who our kids are hanging out with. Listen to the parents if they're telling you something. Please listen. Instead of saying there's nothing they can do. Listen to the parents when they're trying to reach out for help. I reached out for help so many times with this individual that was around my son. But I had to get an eviction notice because he was staying in my house for a month.
Tanya, I'll just ask you to wrap up because your
Okay.
time is up.
But we need to come together as a community and help these kids that are getting into these gangs. Because there are people that are convincing these kids that gangs are the way to go when they're not.
Thank you, Tanya. We're sorry for your loss again. All right, sir, other public comment? Any other public comment before we move ahead with our first topic? No, we don't. Okay, we'll close our public comment period there. And now we'll move into the first topic for the evening, which is the issue of domestic violence. And I believe that Ben Halverson, Assistant City Attorney and Domestic Violence Prosecutor, was going to give us a brief introduction. And I'm going to turn it to the rest of you to react and keep our discussion focused on that issue of domestic violence. So, Ben?
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Ben Halverson. I'm Deputy City Attorney. I'm one of 3 domestic violence prosecutors for the city.
Speak up, please.
Speak up was the request.
Sorry, and thank
No,
you.
it's okay. I have a hard time being loud.
Stand up.
Stand out.
Yeah, and anybody, you should feel free to stand up, and that helps you get your message.
Understood.
District Attorney,
Don't
so
feel any
your voice
obligation,
should
but
be
feel
like
free.
this.
Use the microphone.
So, I'm doing this job almost 9 years. Officer Nash, sitting next to me, has been doing it longer than that. And I can tell you that we all get to the same place eventually the more we do this job, which is that reforming domestic abusers is notoriously difficult, if not impossible. We are talking about a population of individuals that are not afflicted by, the cause of the violence is not addiction, it is not mental illness. These are personality disorders, which are notoriously difficult to treat in a community setting. We see this in real life every day. Most abusers I prosecute, if they're going to reoffend, they're going to do it really fast and they're going to be felons. Sometimes they may make it happen within 1 year. Now, instead of focusing on incarcerating, prosecuting domestic abusers, which will always be part of the process, we need to focus on preventing re-victimization and reducing the available pool of victims for domestic abusers generally. We need to be intervening with small children who witness these kind of acts before it is too late, because by the time you are with me or you are with the county attorney, it is often going to be too late. And it is the most cost-effective way. This is the most critical part of what we are doing right now. Throwing people in jail is an important part of the process, but preventing that repeat victimization is even more important. And I'll say this. Children, by the way, are much more likely to engage in this kind of conduct that everyone is concerned about if they grow up in an environment like this without a parent to say what is the difference between right and wrong. Now, I'll close with this. It is not a victim's responsibility to establish a case or to prosecute or to participate in any prosecution. It's on law enforcement, it's on prosecutors to work with the evidence we have and secure justice for victims and their families. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ben. And for everyone at the table and also members of the public, if you're interested, you have on your table this two-sided sheet broken up into these 4 topics. Each one then has a series of bullet points that are existing action items that have been proposed by staff. None of these have been approved by City Council. We don't know for sure if we'll move in that direction. They're purely a draft, but if that helps you focus your thoughts, or you see something else that you want to add, let's get that onto our list. Again, our goal here is to develop those action items, not necessarily solve all the problems, but make sure we've got good content for future discussions. Who wants to kick off with other things on the issue of domestic violence?
You didn't mention
Sorry,
that city.
sir. You know what? This is just for the table at this point. So, don't be wallflowers here.
Well,
We'll start with Sheriff, and then we'll go to Councilmember Purington.
just as a
comment about what we're seeing in the amount of domestic violence, especially coming from the jail standpoint. One of the things that came up this morning when I came in to work was my captain in my patrol division said that we had put about 15 people in jail for domestic abuse this past weekend. That's probably more than for anything else. And with some of the laws they've helped us out with, the legislature with the strangulation, that helps when it comes to better prosecution and stuff. But we're seeing more and more of that we didn't see in the past. But just mostly for the people that don't realize, you might think that 2, 3, 4 people get thrown in jail. There's about 15 this past weekend.
So Sheriff, that kind of begs the question, how do we need any sort of legislative fixes that we should be looking forward to the next session for, or is that space pretty well occupied? I know we've got at least one legislator with us.
Well, as Ben said, when they go to jail for the most part, and quite honest, it's the males that are usually end up in the jail, but they don't stay there. It's not a long-term thing. There's a restraining order. Now you've got fathers and husbands being kept away from their families, kept away from their homes. We see this happen a lot, and it turns into a long-term issue. And I don't know what laws you could make, or if you can retrain people, so to speak, in their mind to not be violent, because that's what it is. It's exactly what Ben said. And we just see this all the time, and a lot of times it's the same offenders. It's in some cases it might be some young adult, maybe fairly new to marriage or something, and we hope that one trip through the system will fix that, because they don't want that to happen. But talking about guns and stuff like that, that's another issue. I mean, trying to take guns away from somebody without a court order. I mean, even if there is a court order, trying to make sure you get them all there's a lot of problems that come with that. So I know there's some concerns about that, but I'm not sure what the answer is. I'm just saying that it's there.
Okay, thank you, Councilman Puritan.
Well, I guess my question was, and I don't know if this part of what you have on the agenda, but this is what Katie has actually been trying to address with the Family Justice Center. Councilmember Owen has really been working on it. Ellie's been working on it. So I think that is not only a place for these people to go, the victims to go, but they're not looking at them as victims, but as survivors. So I don't know if Katie can talk to that a little bit about, I mean, there's some steps going forward. It's not going to cure it, but there's still something that needs to be done for the offenders, because the strangulation law that was passed, what was it, now 2 sessions ago, has made an incredible difference, because now it's a felony, before it was just misdemeanor. So you have to look at what can we do as a society for the survivors, but also if these are not retrainable individuals that are committing the offenses, then what do we do with them? And where are they going to go?
Family Justice Center, I'm going to just ask Katie, Allie, comment. We want to make sure that people understand Family Justice Center is a place to put all the resources, or many of the resources, for domestic violence victims in one place, so that they don't have to sort of one-stop shopping for them. Lots of benefits from that. A lot of people around this table, are we on track as a community to move forward with Family Justice Center? I think I can say that the city is highly committed to that. I'd like to hear probably back from county representatives, are we going to get that done? Katie, Ellie, how do you want to comment?
Yes, we are going to get that done. We are on a good path. We have great community support. I guess I would just add that a Family Justice Center puts all the resources in one place, and it is very victim survivor focused. So if a survivor comes to the Family Justice Center and does not want to talk to me, a law enforcement officer, I will not be pushed on them. So it's a place where survivors can come and say, I need these services and not these services. it is supposed to be survivor focused, so anybody that can refer survivors to us to tell us what you want, we are still at a very, we're in the research and development phase, but the Family Justice Center Alliance that the city contracted with has agreed that this city is ready for a family justice center because of the community partnerships that are already in place and the support, so it will get done.
Okay, the first bullet contemplates a memorandum of understanding and agreement between the city and the county. County Attorney Whito, Sheriff, anybody else connected to the county, do you anticipate any hiccups, problems establishing a domestic violence center or family justice center from your side?
I can speak to that. No, Katie and Ben have done great work. The county attorney's office looks forward to a partnership with the city. We share the same folks that enter the center, right? So to Council Person Parrington's point, when strangulation was passed, became a felony, my office has jurisdiction over felonies where the city attorney does not, but it's essentially the same folks that we work with. And so I think this is the right step for us to take, and I'm looking forward to reviewing the memorandum and signing it.
Sure.
I haven't been involved in that portion of it, so I talk about school.
Okay. Other questions for especially our visitors or comments on the issue of domestic violence? Ellie.
Can I add a quick thing? So, hi, I'm Ellie. I'm the AmeriCorps member serving with Officer Katie Nash, helping with the development of the Family Justice Center. I want to clarify for the public who may not be familiar with this concept or folks that are sitting around the table that we're not just talking about victims of domestic violence, which we also often when we imagine them, we assume that they're adults. But we're also talking about the children that witness this violence. And so when we discuss ways to break that cycle of violence, to support kids that are in our schools, give them the resources that they need so they don't fall through the cracks and become members of these gang communities. A Family Justice Center provides that support as well. It brings in agencies like Early Head Start, the Boys and Girls Club, and gives those services to those children, as well as victims of human trafficking, elder abuse, and those child abuse victims. Thanks.
Mayor, to build on that, on the other side, to put it in context, the number of domestic PFMAs, whether it's aggravated, misdemeanor, or strangulations, in 2022 was 50% of all assaults that the police department handled. And so when you start rolling in the family stuff with the kids, those numbers are just going to skyrocket. And obviously, we're going to get to the violent crime, which is absolutely terrible. It's abhorrent. We need to stay on top of that. But when you start comparing numbers and percentages, those pale compared to what we're seeing on the domestic side of the shop. So it certainly merits discussion on this as we work on both. But we need to make sure we have that in context. The other, obviously, a lot of attention, a lot of shock, totally unacceptable for this community. And it's out there for everyone to see. We don't hear about the domestic stuff because it takes place behind closed doors. And if I don't see it, then it's not happening, and we end up with these situations. So the back end, I should say the front end of what those three are working on, as I have been tasked to research basically bolstering or creating an investigative unit just for family crimes. We have 2 right now, probably better than anybody else in the state, but obviously with those numbers, they can't keep up. So certainly worth discussion on this particular topic.
Thank you, Chief. Councilmember Owen.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a handful of comments, so you might have to get your timer going again. I think the first couple things I want to say, I'm probably going to say a couple of times tonight because I think they're thematic. I understand that these proposals for strategies came out of a staff retreat. And so I think they are naturally government focused. but we can't government our way out of this problem. And so I'm concerned, and I think we need to strengthen these action steps with much more of a community basis. We have to improve victim and survivor access to civil legal services. It's essential. We have to have church ministries and culturally responsive victim services. And I think the city, while we don't provide those, we can certainly convene, engage, and bring people to the table. We need to be communicating to our colleges and universities that we have to increase participation in social work programs and retain those graduates in the community so that we have the mental health services, adult and children, to systematically address this. And we have to be working with the hospitals. If we don't have sane nurses and forensic nurses, we will struggle to prosecute these crimes. I believe the more aggressive we are in the way we prosecute this, we help to do exactly what Ben said, is we prevent re-victimization. And more importantly, we confer dignity to victims by saying you're worthy. You're worthy of our best efforts. We will go after these criminals and we will address it as aggressively as we can. So I think there's much more community work we need to do, but I also think there's more that we can do on the governmental side that we've missed here. And the big one that I would add and ask be added to this list is training, and training across the government. It's not just about BPD, it's about our 911 dispatchers, it's about our rec staffers who are eyes on the street, it's about airport and transit employees who will see trafficking victims, people who are being victimized. It's about a city ethos that says women and children will be safe in this community, and we will bring every resource that we have to bear. We need to have our local courts talking so that we have the full suite of enforcement tools at play. We're gonna have to ask serious questions about whether or not we are appropriately, without being burdensome, but appropriately levying restitution and fines. Because restitutions and fines are a source of victim service funding, and I'm not sure that we're aggressive enough on it. We're gonna need to consider evidence-based prosecution, so that cases can be brought forward when victims themselves are struggling to engage. We're gonna have to ask ourselves tough questions about whether or not we want to interview children and whether or not we want to give the littlest victims of domestic violence a voice in the process. We're going to have to think hard about our evidence gathering at the scene, especially in strangulation cases, so that our prosecutors, city and county, have the tools they need to be aggressive here. And we're gonna have to have some uncomfortable conversations about systemically how abusers are using the domestic relations side of civil courts to continue to terrorize and control their victims through parenting plans, dissolutions. We do need to engage with our legislators because I think there are changes that we can be making. I think we get too many free passes. There are too many misdemeanors before DV becomes a felony in this state. And I think we need to talk about whether or not violence committed in the presence of children is an immediate aggravating factor for a possible felony prosecution. I think we need to decide the scenarios in which things can be immediately elevated to a felony rather than just strangulation. I think the most important thing that we need to do as a city is to let go of the defensiveness. We need to talk about every system, we need to talk about every operation without feeling like people are being blamed. Because the people in the system are working hard. But there are systems and processes and habits that we're gonna have to question if we really wanna go after half of the assaults in the community. And so I would urge us, when we talk about all of these tonight, to think about community, to think about letting go of defensiveness. And then the last thing I would say is we have to start getting to measurable targets. It's not good enough to just say reduce family violence. We need some numbers on this. Pick a target. But let's aim at something specific instead of just generically saying we're going to reduce this. Let's pick a percentage, let's pick some increases. I don't care what it is, but we need to get something measurable here so that we're focused. And those in general would be my thoughts.
Excellent, thank you, Councilor Rowan. There were more than just four, but for our note Kate, for Gavin over there in particular, ones that I made sure to write down were training for government employees to spot domestic violence, assessing child abuse and assessing our fees and fine structure, training for our attorneys, and measurable results. The last one I think we want to make sure is part of every action item here. We're, if you can't measure it, it doesn't exist, or whatever that phrase is. So we're always want to looking or think about how to measure success. So excellent. Other comments? Councilmember Neese has his hand up out there in cyber land. Let's see if we can hear Councilmember Neese. Councilmember Neese, you.
I am here. Can you hear me?
If we're connected.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great.
And just ask that you
I'll be-
keep your voice up because it's a big room and little speak.
Okay, I will lean into the microphone.
That's excellent.
So I always don't like to follow Jennifer because she covered like 95% of everything I was going to say. So Jennifer, thank you very much for being leading before me. I don't have to say a lot of things, but I do want to. One of the things I was thinking about, because there was the council received an email regarding the Omaha 360. I had a chance to take a look at that. And one of the things they emphasized, which I believe for quite a while, is we need a community-based system. One of the things I don't see, and maybe I don't see everyone here, it's kind of hard, I don't know if I saw all the invitations, but I don't see, church leaders here. I don't see other organizations. I don't, there's a lot of there in the community of leaders that have impact on this situation. And so I think we need to really make sure we're reaching out to these, Mayor, I think you call them nonprofits. I'm going to call them the churches, because without hope, people do different things. They need to have hope. And so the churches bring hope to people. And so I think one of the things we need to look at is expanding them, making sure we're inviting them, bringing them to the table. I agree with Jennifer, or Councilwoman Owen, regarding the impacts on children. As we learned at the last council retreat, ACES scores and how it impacts children at a young age are very, very traumatic. And so that needs to be looked at, I think, in the legislature when there's violence with a child there. And then one of the other things I think we have to realize, because this crime and what's happening is our community. These are our brothers or sisters, our husbands and wives and aunts and uncles, these people we know. When this happens, our community is failing. When we have to arrest someone, we as a community fail. And we need to look at ways to help that individual who failed, not just arrest them and lock them up and put them away. Now there are good. Please don't misunderstand me that I think that they shouldn't be arrested and put in jail. There are things within the system that that's what it takes. But I think if we're involving more community-based organizations, I think we can help and divert a lot of these things and help heal these people. So we're not having to continually arrest them and repeat this same cycle over and over with this generation and then the generation after us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Neese. Others, Councilmember Trickey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with all of that. I mean, bottom line, this is a systematic failure that has been decades in the making because we have not been funding the system so that it could do its job. From education to parole, all over the place. It's a systematic failure. We're stepping in the right direction doing these things. These things need to be done. But I want to focus on the last issue there on the bottom. If we're going to have an impact now on this issue and not in 5 years, 10 years, we need to start a public awareness campaign now, telling people that if it's happening to you, you need to report it. Telling people that if they're doing it, they need to find help so that they stop doing it. There's no other way to drive this problem, to impact this problem in the short term, other than telling people it's not acceptable, what you can do about it if it happens, what you can do about it if you yourself are finding yourself in a situation where you might be a perpetrator of it. So I see that the PIO is down on that action item, and I actually have a few things to share with you about resources that I've come up with in order to help make that happen.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Trickey. I'm going to come back, but I'm going to just ask the city administrator to explain that QR code so you know what that's about. Chris?
So just very briefly, for our thousands of watchers out there online, the QR code that's on your screen, you hit that QR code, you can give us comments. It's not meant to be questions for tonight, but it's meant to give you an opportunity to provide written comments relative to strategies and action steps moving forward. So that's what you'll get if you use that QR code. If you're in the audience, or if you're online watching.
I'm just going to make a special request or invitation to any of our partners here, especially if you're in Helena. Domestic violence may not be exactly in your wheelhouse, but you may have experience, and we want to hear from you. If you, in particular, if you have insights for us, maybe you've seen things in other community, you've got your own ideas, don't be shy. Go ahead.
Hi. My name is Chantel Anderson. I'm a deputy city attorney. I'd like to look at this from a different angle as well. I think we also need to address the bail bond industry when it comes to how they are allowing individuals to post their bond. Right now, they're allowed to do a $0 down or a time pay bond here locally. And the way that that impacts us is we have individuals that should not be getting out of jail that are basically getting out of jail on a signature only. I don't think a lot of the public realizes that. It's just basically left up to the discretion and the credit worthiness of the individual on whether our bail bondsmen are bonding them out. That has a direct effect on our domestic violence cases because it creates a revolving door where individuals are getting out on a signature. The other thing I'd like to bring up, and this is maybe a source of something that can be done legislatively, I don't know, but right now we tell the offenders when they leave the jail that they're not to have any contact with their victims. And we in fact make it punishable by a separate criminal offense if they violate that no contact order. And yet victims of domestic violence can be manipulated into posting bonds for their offenders. They can also be manipulated into paying for things like their GPS monitors monthly as well as their supervision that they're on. This creates a power and control dynamic where victims of a domestic violence case are essentially putting up vehicles, putting up other collateral in order to bond their own, the person out of jail. And it also puts them at risk. The offender can say, for example, I'm not going to show up to jail I'm not going to show up to court. And if I don't show up to court, you're going to lose your car. These are the kind of power and control dynamics that are being created by the bail bond industry right now and how our state laws are. So I would just like to add that to the conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that insight. The rest of us would have no idea what goes on. It makes sense. Thank you, Chantel. Councilor Pearson?
I just wanted to add, I think Councilmember Owen, there was another step in there that we didn't address that to put that down was legislative action regarding how much does it take to get a felony? So I think that is something that might be part of that conversation.
Very good. Thank you. What else on domestic violence? What else are we missing from our list of bullet points that we don't want to lose track of? I'm not seeing much, so I'm ready to move on to our next topic real soon. Sort of speak now, forever hold your peace. Councilmember Joy.
Thank you, Mayor and Council and everyone at the table and in the audience. Thank you for coming tonight. I just wanted to go to bullet point number 4, establishing intervention strategies for junior high and high school age children. I really don't think we should wait until junior high for girls to learn to be assertive. We can't just say girls grow up to be abused. If we're doing that, we're really, really, really in big trouble. We are not going to raise our daughters and our girls to be abused. So I would take that all the way down to kindergarten and preschool. Girls need to be assertive and know what is and is not okay in the way that other people treat them. And that doesn't matter who that is. And we need to have that assertive female voice and that assertive female who can say no and walk away. So I would go all the way down to preschool or whatever is appropriate.
Thank you for that point. Okay, let's move on then to our second topic. Before we do, we want you to know how this information is going to be used, where we're at in this process of developing strategy. So I'm going to ask our City Administrator Chris Kotowski to give us a little more detail about that.
So I'll just be extremely brief, and thank you, Ben, Katie, Ellie, and the council who've supported. In this case, we got the experts in the country, the Family Justice Center Alliance, who've been here, we've invested in, We got their draft strategic plan late last week. So that'll help provide a very good foundation for best practices nationally to move forward on. I wish I could say we have that for all of the topics we have, but in this case, in addition to all the notes we've got, thank you, I just wanted the public to be aware, this is something, because of that support and the investments over the past year, we've been, and staff pushing this for a long, long time inside the police department and elsewhere. This is moving, I think, at a pace and with information where we'll have some very tangible steps to take forward so that this is just not an idea and a wish, but the community can make some hard decisions about how to go from here to there. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris. With that, then we'll go to the second topic, which is developing intervention/diversion strategies. I'm going to ask Chief St. John to give us an introduction to that topic. And Chief, if I can ask you to do two things as part of your brief discussion. One is to define this and what it is exactly and how it's distinct from what will be our next topic, which is a much more, I guess I call it broad one of reducing violent and property crimes. It's very much a catch-all. But this is more specifically targeted. We'll just need you to, Chief, to kind of keep us on track with what it is we want to talk about here. And then second, maybe tell us which of our partners in the room have special expertise in this area that you'd like them to enlighten us with, so we can put the pressure on. So you know that a lot better than I do for sure. So Chief St. John.
Certainly, Mayor, thank you. You'll hear me touch on this a little bit when you get into the violent crime part, but three pillars that we really build on, regardless of what we're doing, are prevention, intervention, and then suppression or enforcement. And in this particular case, we're looking at intervention and diverting people out of a particular path. A technical definition of that, it's an effort, an activity to change knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors after a problem has been identified, and usually among individuals and groups that are already involved in criminal activity. So we're not getting to them on the front end, they're already involved, and somebody has contact with them, whether it's an officer, probation officer, whatever, and they take measures to divert that person, intervene from whatever behavior it is into some instructive programs. So the examples out there on the really outside of the box thinking, we have one that's called a credible, let me get my notes here. Whoever it is, he's credible. So that means a credible messenger. So that means somebody who's been there and done that. For example, somebody that's been in the gang world that we now defer or have intervention with individuals to talk to that person and get them directed out of that style. Another one is a hospital-based intervention. So when we have victims of crime that show up at the hospital, along with their family, there are people up there to intervene and try to dissuade them from retaliation, if that's what their mindset is, and get them into constructive programs. And then the one thing that I'm very proud that we're already doing is that SEPTED program. So you have that underway, so that's ongoing. As it stands right now, none of those exist for us, so we rely very heavily on probation parole, people that are coming out of the court that are diverted initially or being sentenced, and then there's some diversion, so we get them out of the system. So we have both Mr. Hurd and Ms. Weston down there, who are the content experts, if you would, please.
Okay.
I think he's calling you out, Katie.
Well, I think that collaboration between probation and parole and the Billings Police Department has gotten significantly better, probably over the last 5 to 10 years, to the point where we do have officers who are now placed with the police department on task force that I think will allow us to do some of these things. We are going to be devoting a probation and parole officer to a high-risk gang task force and placing them with the street crimes unit to better monitor some of our individuals in that sense, hoping that we can divert them ultimately. We also have an individual placed with the HIDA task force at this point. All of those things I think are helping. There's always room for improvement. And I think that some of the things that Chief St. John brought up, the credible messenger, which to me, it screams peer support. And I think that there was a really strong push for peer support, really kind of pre-COVID. But it certainly kind of fell off a little bit after that. But I think it's still valuable and probably deserves a place at the table.
I want to discuss accountability. I think it's paramount that we have accountability in all of these interactions with these folks. She talks about peer support, whatever 12-step program you might be working. I think there's a huge component to accountability. Those folks hold the others accountable. I shared with Miss Weston earlier, my mother is the one that made it clear to me at a very young age that you didn't put your hands on women, girls, young ladies. So that was something that was taught to me in the home. But we see a huge number of the strangulation cases prosecuted across this state. We all know the definition of insanity, and that's to keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So this parole board doesn't provide people with the privilege of parole when you repeatedly go out and victimize our communities, because first and foremost, public safety is paramount to this parole board that is selected by our governor, and we hold folks accountable. It's freedom through accountability and responsibility. And if you repetitively put your hands on someone or violate the terms and conditions of your parole release, you're going to lose that privilege. I think the chief and the sheriff and Mr. Twito and certainly Miss Weston can attest to the level of accountability that has come to this parole board since my appointment, January of 2021. It's huge that we have folks with backgrounds and expertise in criminal justice in identifying these folks and treating them accordingly. And it's worked to a very positive outcome, and we're happy to be a partner in this team. So, I mean, the chief can attest, and so can the sheriff, that I'm always available. And we work in a collaborative effort to decide who's coming out of prison and who's not.
Okay, if I can just ask a question that one of the commentators presented, which was we're often concerned that a disproportionate number of parolees find their way to Billings. We hear that a lot. That's front and center when it comes to this intervention mechanism. What are the facts, if you know them, and what is the data where we can track it? Because we need to be able to communicate with our constituents on that topic. I don't know who wants to comment.
I'm happy to answer the question. The disproportionate number of folks that you see released to this community are due to the disproportionate number of folks that are prosecuted out of this county. And we try to reintegrate those people back into society, and all of their family and peer support are in these communities. They're the ones that are selecting to come here. We're not pushing those folks to these communities. The other side of that is you have a male and a female pre-release center that houses, and Katie can probably tell me better than, but I say about 450 inmates in those two facilities. So you've got a female pre-release center that houses 220, 240, and you've got a male pre-release center that houses 200. We have a collective number of 450 inmates living in this community in pre-release centers. And I don't think that the public is aware of that, but that's our purpose, to try to reintegrate these folks into society, and we're driven by where those folks are sentenced out of, where their peer support is, where their familial support is. So Region 4 is a large area, and Kate coming back here are from here. So.
Okay, thank you, Stephen. So your position would be that it is proportional to what we generate. I'm just wondering if there's any data or written reports where somebody who's interested in this subject could learn more?
Well, they can certainly go to our website with the Montana Board of Pardons and Parole. We have allegedly the most transparent agency in state government, according to Mark Murphy, that used to work for Mr. Twido for many years, worked in the Attorney General's office. Mr. McElroy, my chief of staff, holds his head high for presenting that whole platform so people can find out who's going to a parole hearing, who's had a parole hearing. They can oppose or be a proponent of that person. So I think you can just check out our website, Montana Board of Pardons and Parole, and see everything that we have there. But
I would also add that if you Google the Montana Department of Corrections public dashboard, there is a dashboard on that site that breaks it out via community, and you can see how many people being supervised in the Billings region, how many of them were sentenced in Billings and how many of them were not. It even breaks it out into the other regions. So that data is available also on that website.
Okay, thank you. So again, everyone, we're talking about crime prevention within a group of people who are already part of the system. So parole and probation, corrections, diversion programs. We've heard a little bit about hospital-based concept, which is interesting. Also, certainly our courts. I guess I would ask our judges who are with us, when it comes to judicial strategies, judicial resources, what's working, what's not, how can we help in Billings on the judicial front?
Mayor, if I may say one more thing before Judge Kolar takes off and addresses this issue. We have the largest parole office in the state of Montana in Billings, with the largest number of probation and parole officers in that office, which is indicative of us putting the people on the ground. Director Gukin at the previous session, Katie, how many positions did we get in Billings? 7. Out of the 10 positions that DOC got for new probation and parole officers, this lady got 7 of them for this community for a very, very, very apparent reason. So our director, our governor, our staff are really addressing these issues by putting the boots on the ground.
Thank you.
We're also hiring.
Yeah.
Everybody needs a job. Any of our judges want to weigh in on this topic?
I'll weigh in. I think one of the biggest issues is accountability in sentencing. When we sentence, the accountability of a defendant doing their sentence. And are they able to pay for some of the programs? I have a lot of revocations. Let's talk about domestic abuses, partner family member assault classes that they're supposed to do, required by the code, Montana code. A lot of them come back, they're not doing their programming. A lot of mental health, not a lot of resources. And so when they come back with the revocations, I'm seeing them over and over and over again, coming through the system, being revoked. Accountability for jail, again, the size of the jail. They're being taken down to the jail and turned away. I don't know if the community, the defendants that are being sentenced, if they care. There's no accountability for them. That's what I feel.
Judge, in your mind, is that if you had a magic wand, would you create more jail space and people to staff it? Is that your top of your list?
Not really. I mean, that would be part of it, but accountability. I mean, we're sentencing people to sentences and we're hand-holding, I'm sorry to say, and we're not, they need to do their programming. And honestly, if you do your programming, maybe you won't be a repeat offender, but like Mr. Halverson said as well, it's part of the dynamics of parenting. I don't know. I'd say bigger jail, is that the answer? I don't know. Do your sentence.
Okay, what other parts of accountability besides jail space would you like to have better access to?
Well, again, better access. Mental health is a huge issue in this community. I've said that. Addiction's a huge issue. Where does the money come from? What are we providing that so these people get their sentence completed. I don't know, maybe the jail it would help if we had a little bit more space, but that's not necessarily the answer. I mean, when we have programs like the Family Justice Center, I think that would be helpful.
Okay, thank you very much. Judge Fair would like to weigh in on this, and she's available online. So Judge Fair, if you can hear us, it's all yours.
Thank you, and I apologize that I had to leave. Are you able to hear me, Mayor Cole?
We can, very well.
Okay, I had to go home and parent, so the topic is very timely. From the district court's perspective, and I say this as a judge that runs two separate drug courts, one the family recovery court, and the second a diversion court that Mr. Twido has been very supportive of. We have to think about crimes in different categories, different buckets. We have a whole group of folks where we catch them for the first time in the system with a possession charge. They've got a baggie, they've got a pipe, they've got a loker, they've got something on their person. They're arrested probably for some misdemeanor offense or get the attention of law enforcement for a misdemeanor offense. And then because they are in possession, it rises to the felony level. And that is their first felony encounter. At that point, if we can get them in programming, get them in treatment, give them a lot of reasons and a lot of incentives to never come back to the system, we're starting to develop better data out of the court that we can stop the revolving door, their reinitiation back into felony crimes. But we can only do that if we have a system that works coherently. And Judge Kolar has been wonderful. She's been working with us when we have folks that have problems in her court, problems in my court, and we're doing that on a phone call basis, on an email basis, judge to judge, because that's the only way we know how to do it. Because our court systems don't talk to each other on a broader sense. I'm able to do things because Mr. Halverson is wonderful and reaches out to other judges and other courts to communicate. But what we have to understand is if we want to catch that bucket of first-time offenders and keep them out of the system so they don't have to go see Mr. Hurd at the parole hearings, we have to really put those folks in a different category. The other category that I know our community is so concerned with are these violent offenders. And I can tell you from working with the sheriff and Captain Lester at the jail, if I have someone that needs to go into jail, they are going into the jail. The sheriff is not turning away violent offenders that are a risk to our community. Now, there's a lot of other folks talking with BPD patrolmen and their command staff that need to go in on a regular basis for a lot of reasons, and part of which is to alleviate any escalation in their behavior based on what's going on. Sorry, it's a vicious golden doodle that I also have to parent. Yeah, that's my security system at this point. Very vicious golden doodle. But that second bucket of folks goes to the bigger issue, and that is this rise in violent crime and more youth offenders with guns. At this point, I'm really looking for a whole community response, which is why I applaud the work that the City Council is doing and this meeting in general. But I think we have to really categorize our offenders. The folks that are in jail on charges of deliberate homicide are in a very different world than someone who got a disorderly conduct and was found with a baggie of meth when they were booked at the jail. So I think we have to make sure that any conversation moving forward understands that there's a population there that we can grab, that we can work on recidivism with, and that we can hopefully keep out of the system and keep out of progressing through felonies.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any legislative tools in this category that we need to be thinking about or focused on? I haven't heard anybody mention it. I just want to throw that out. Get it on the list if there is. Nobody's mentioning anything else. County Attorney Twido.
Yeah, so the County Attorney Association, my office in particular, pushed the diversion at the state level. The primary reason is you do want to capture that population. There is success in diversion programs. There's things to look at. The issue for counties is the funding to be able to do that, and that's the trick. And so we've had receptive legislators. They've been supportive, but we haven't had any meaningful legislation, I think, that's gonna make a difference as far as a diversion program come out of the state legislature.
So is there an opportunity to provide the resources that you would need to expand those services?
Well, you're asking for an opportunity. The opportunity, what I hear is resources to be able to do it or money, not from the state at this time. So, no.
Councilmember Tricky.
Can I follow up to that? Does anybody at the table have any idea as to, has anyone ever asked the question at the Yellowstone County level, how large should our mill levy be for mental health?
So I think the question is, could that be expanded? Should that be expanded? And we may get into that on the general discussion of prevention as opposed to the specifics of intervention of people already in the. But good question. I don't think anybody has an answer to that, but unless somebody has an answer.
Mental health is one of the requirements for a lot of the diversion.
Okay, Councilmember Russes.
Yeah, I just want to go back to this idea of diversion, and is there an opportunity to expand that, the resources available? Because it's not just a county issue, right? It's on the city side as well in our misdemeanor courts. We could potentially have a city-county diversion type program if we can find a way to fund that. So I think that should definitely be on the table as something we should be discussing.
Okay, Councilmember Rowan.
I think we're a little light on action steps on this one. Here's what I think is missing. I think we're missing precision, and I think we need to make a couple of policy decisions. And I think there are experts in this room who could help to influence some of those decisions tonight. So I know you asked the chief to recognize some partners, and he didn't, so I will. Zach Tarakitis is sitting back there, and Substance Abuse Connect has recently led what's called a sequential intercept mapping activity. This maps out all the resources we have at every intervention point in the community, which is a great first start, and I'm sure Zach will talk about it if we ask him to. But it's only a start, because I think if we went a deeper level into not just identifying what resources we have, that'll show us some gaps, and that might address funding. I think we actually need to make decisions about when and how we very specifically want to divert or intervene. And I think we could have some of those conversations tonight. So the feds have this very complicated chart that looks like this, and it doesn't matter what it says, but it shows every point in the system and how people get diverted. So we don't have, in my opinion, or maybe we do, and I just don't know, I don't think we have policy decisions about when we want to intervene and divert. Do we want to intervene and divert at the time of arrest? Do we want to have the resources mobilized so that we are sitting down before arraignment with prosecutors and substance abuse professionals and OPD and saying, we're going to screen you today for substance abuse, mental health, or co-occurring disorder and get you into a program if you want to go before we even see a judge? Or is it after arraignment before trial? Or is it post-conviction and we serve our sentence in a interesting and different way rather than going to YCDF? We actually have never had a conversation about when and how. And I'm sure that there are people who will say at every level, and that's probably right, but we have limited resources. So what's the highest value intervention point? What's the highest value diversion point? When and how can we bring new exits from the sit at YCDF for a trial that takes too long to get to, and then wait to go to DOC with a staffing issue there that is challenging? I mean, we could keep doing the same thing, or we could say, these are the points at which we want to intervene, and here is how we do it. And I think we could have a conversation about that tonight. When would it matter most to mobilize our resources, have assessments in real time, and get people into alternative systems?
If anybody wants to comment on that, the timing of these evaluations, how they'd be funded, feel free to do so. Councilmember Zone's right. Every level is the place, but we're going to have to prioritize very limited resources.
And I think, Mayor, if I could, I think we will probably ultimately need maps, real concrete maps, that says, at this level, here's where we go. At this level, here's how we exit. And I think those maps probably look different for juveniles, maybe for young adults, and other sets of categories, but I think we need specific visible maps that are informed by the people in this room.
Comment, response. More about our appropriation, corrections, judicial.
Mayor?
Councilmember Bernice.
Thank you, Mayor. I always appreciate Jennifer. She knows quite a bit about this issue, and frankly, I would like to hear from Zach if he's would be willing to speak to the council this time, because as we were going through this and listening to the judges talk about this, we keep saying we're talking about diverting and intervening with these community programs, but as Jennifer said, I don't know, what programs we have, how they're doing, whether or not they work or not, and who's involved. And it mentioned often that we need to have accountability with these programs. So we just don't want to divert someone or intervene somewhere with someone's program who isn't going to work. So we need to make sure they're evidence-based and producing results. And so I think we need to hear about that. And I really appreciate the judge talking about classifications. That goes right into what Jennifer's talking about, where to intervene and what. And I think the experts of knowing when is, in the family violence is going to be, people handling that and giving us good ideas and indications of where and when we need to intervene, or divert and what type of things we need to look for. Hearing the judges talk about saying they're doing what they can now because they think it's the right thing to do, basically, and communicating with each other. But I think if those judges leave and those relationships are gone, there's no process in place, and I think we should capitalize on some of the processes they're doing now to formalize that into some good policies to help, make it more of a set system that we follow through on and maybe add to and change.
Okay.
So again, love to hear from Zach if he's willing to talk.
And he's here and he's willing to talk. So, Zach, you've been specifically asked just to comment. You've heard the discussion. Just go ahead and stand up. Give your focus on the pizza box, and then we'll get a recording of anything you have to say. Go ahead. We've got about 5 minutes in council. We need to move on to the next topic. So, Zach Tarakidas.
Great, thanks. Zach Tarakidas. I'm with Substance Abuse Connect and working with the COC, the Continuum of Care for Housing, as well, to try to bring a lot of those efforts together. I'm also on the school board trustee with SD too. So a lot of these things are hitting home with the involvement that we have in the community. And I appreciate the sequential intercept map that we just did is related to our law enforcement and criminal justice system. That same process has been done in the past by a lot of professionals in the community for youth pathways to identify what's going on with youth that are outside of our criminal justice system, but maybe entering into that. Our prevention mapping has been done in the past. A lot of this is a revisit of what we need to do now, and we need to keep updating those things currently, but start acting on them as we get the information as it comes in. There's plenty of professionals that are in the community that have a really, really sharp idea of where the soft spots are in our system and how to identify and get the resources to them. I think the other thing that we've definitely pointed out as we look at phenomenal Family Justice Center ideas is that we have a giant capacity issue in this community. So we can talk about adding people into all of these systems. They don't exist. If we're talking about adding nurses into the system, Billings Clinic has 200 nursing available jobs today. They're a healthcare provider. If you want to nurse into the school district, as we're talking about, if you want to nurse into the jail system, you're going to have to compete. So when we talk about putting resources in the system, it's attracting people to our community that currently don't live here that want to do this work. And that means we got to have a healthy community and continue to work for that. And that is taking the systems that we're identifying, finding the soft spots, and putting the resources to those soft spots that are going to have the biggest impact. When Judge Fair is talking about the categories, it is identifying the populations we can start to move the needle on and staying committed to that until the needle moves, and then start reaching out to the next soft spot that we can get to. And the professionals know where those are. They know diversion is a huge area that we've talked about all the way through the system of keeping people out of the system so we're not catching up all the way on the tail end. Once they're arrested and we've got to decide where they're going to go, we have to get there earlier. And we are talking about that, but it's a very hard thing to fund. We know we don't put money into prevention, even though we want kids to be better. But the reality of it is that we don't put a lot of resources into it because that's a long process to stay committed to for a generation of kids to come out differently than the world we are currently in control of, that we're expecting them to live in. It is our world that we own, this group, and we've got to create an environment that they're going to be able to stay into the positive side of things with more positive youth involvement, more positive adults in their life, identifying when they're in a situation so it's not becoming repetitive. But we do have this mapping that's happening. We have to, again, keep inviting people to the table like this as a start, but then start acting where the soft spots are immediately with very defined approaches, and I think also the metrics that we're going to stick. And the metrics have to go beyond the politics of the day. Yeah, you do have to talk about guns at some point when 280 guns have been stolen out of cars this year. You have to have a conversation about a gun. You want to have a gun? Have a gun. Be responsible with it. I mean, we have to be okay getting beyond the politics because this community is different than other communities that are having similar problems, but not at our level. And that has to be okay to say out loud. Same thing with our relationship with our reservation. He wasn't wrong in saying that they're not represented. Whether that's because they're not showing up or because we're not inviting them, doesn't matter anymore. It's unique to our community. We have to address it for what it is. And the population represented in the jails is also a very high proportionate of people of color. That's not unusual to most of our criminal justice system, but we have to identify why is it unique to us and stick with those things. But the maps, the professional ways of addressing these things exist in our community. We just have to revisit those and move forward.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mayor, if I could just follow up then.
Okay,
We'll
try to move on. Go ahead.
Yep, so Zach has done a great job of outlining the mapping, but we still have this question of, given the limited resources, where is the best place? So I'd like to hear from the prosecutors in the room. If they were in control, would they be talking diversion before the initial appearance, right after the initial appearance, right after conviction? Like, what do you think?
Ben Halverson, go ahead, Ben.
As far as diversion goes, and again, I'll speak just to the very specific subset of people I'm prosecuting, that is not an effective, and in fact would be completely detrimental to the overall progress we've made against domestic violence in the last 40 years.
Agreed.
Other council members?
So not so much mapping, it's the right person for diversion. So if you want to effectively use your resources, you identify the person who's going to be amenable to diversion. You don't want to have the severe co-occurring mental health disorder and the substance abuse disorder because that's not right for diversion.
So when do you identify that?
Well, you get incredible screening tools. I ran a program on a shoestring budget. I conned a professor from the Texas Christian to loan me his screening tool. We worked it through the justice court and we tried to do 4 a week, and then we had someone that would go and do a further test, and they would say yay or nay, and then we put them into a diversion program to try to keep them out anywhere beyond arraignment. So that's an example that it's who is right for diversion if you want to use your resources correctly, not where the point of entry is, because if the person's right, wherever they sit in the system, they might be right for diversion. It's, in that situation that I used, like at the initial stages, like arraignment or the initial appearance. If you wanted to do it in city court, I would recommend right there. So you'd have to have some sort of prosecutorial intervention. You'd have to say, based on this guy's criminal history, he's not a domestic violence offender, he's not this, but these are the people, this is the population we're gonna say, oh, maybe he should go here. Then you have a screening tool, and then you pick a certain population to try to keep out. That pays dividends on the back end. You may only get 5 to 10% success rate of the people you want to divert, but it's 5 to 10% of somebody down the road that's going to be multiple convictions, cost to the jail, cost to whatever, cost to the prosecutors, however you want to slice
So
it.
what would it take to get a screening tool that we shared between city and county, so we don't have someone being diverted at district court but not BMC, or at BMC but not district court? How do we get to a unified screening tool that helps us find those people that cannot go spend time at YCDF?
I mean, there are a lot of screening tools out there. And so you need to put together a working group. Some of the judges are aware of screening tools. They use screening tools for the drug courts already, so that they are familiar with the people that can offer those type of things. They're not all free. They do have an expense. It just depends. I would recommend that you would get together a group of people, maybe to meet with some of the judges that run the drug courts, to talk to their experts to say, hey, where could you get this screening tool? I can give you the contact information I had when I ran my program.
That sounds like a good action.
Okay, with that, we'll move on with one last question for our state partners. We heard from Steve that we have our 2 pre-release centers, which do a great job. Thank you, Alternatives, but they are a magnet post-release and post-sentence to Billings. Is the state doing anything to develop pre-release facilities outside of Billings, especially in western Montana? DOJ, Katie and Steve?
I can answer affirmatively to that. They are working on securing a pre-release in the Kalispell area, which would help divert some people away from eastern Montana. There is not one there at this point. I think they're looking at expanding beds in other places as well.
Okay, Steve, do you want to add to that?
I'd just like to make people aware that the efficacy of impacting human behavior relies a lot on who the offender is and what their susceptibility is to being diverted on the front end. The DOC, and I applaud them, and Mr. Twito's office and the courts have done. Montana's the only state that has a DOC commitment process. No other state in the union has it, which allows the DOC to place these offenders accordingly prior to putting them in the prison. So they get the opportunity on a DOC commit from the district court on a felony crime. They can screen and place that person in a whole myriad of placements. And then a lot of times what happens is they go through all these different programs to try to rehabilitate and impact this person's behavior. And then they break into the prison through the back door instead of the front door. And then I'm responsible for trying to figure out what the next possible successful placement is for that person in our community when that process has already been done by the DOC and they've tried their darndest to get that person into a placement that's going to work the best for them. So the county attorney's office, the judges, the State Department of Corrections, they've all done their job in helping try to find a place for these folks. But sometimes we just can't help those that don't want to help themselves, no matter how much time and energy we put into it. So we want everybody to have their eyes wide open going into these conversations. A lot of times people don't want to have the difficult questions asked or answered, but I think it's imperative that you guys know that the Department of Corrections and the county attorneys across the state utilize that DOC commitment to try to impact these folks' behavior prior to them becoming repetitive offenders in our system.
Okay, thank you very much. Councilor Purrington.
So I'm serving on the Alternatives Board, and Katie and I both sit on that programs committee. In this past month or so, I've had interviews with Passages residents and also Alpha. And the one thing that I found, especially among the men in Alpha House, I don't know if anyone's here from Alternatives, I didn't see if you're behind me, but the one thing that I saw that was missing, and I know Representative Carrie Seekins Crow has brought this up too, is education and job training. Some of them, they have no idea what they're going to do when they get out. Some of them have been through the system 6 times. And so at some point, do you say, they're not going to work in the community? You know, they need to be in jail or in prison. So there are some challenges, I think, among the recidivism and how those are addressed. I don't know, these people are much smarter and much more knowledgeable than I am about that. But I'm just saying that there are issues with reoccurring.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. That was a great discussion. Got some good points there. We'll move on then to our third item. Again, I'm going to turn it to the chief for being asked whether you want to take a break. My inclination is to stay and get through this next item, but again, if anybody needs the bathroom, just go through there and help yourself. Unless the majority here would like to take a break now. How you doing? Keep going? Good? Okay. So this third item is titled Reduce Violent and Property Crimes. This is a big catch-all category. The focus, as I understand it, is on law enforcement itself. Catching the bad guys, making sure that happens. There's more to it, so I'm going to turn it over to the chief to make his introduction. So, Chief?
Thanks, Mayor. As I indicated before, a key part of this on the front end is going to be the prevention and the intervention programs that we talk about. Going to help out immensely. This specifically is to the enforcement side of things. And as you look at the great majority of those bullets, they essentially are putting measures in place to increase officer presence, be proactive in problematic areas using data and some of our experiences, and then be able to follow up appropriately on the backside with our detectives. So when you look at all of those things, that's really what it's set up to do. I will tell you that our partners that are here at the table, I made one phone call and asked, and everybody showed up. And I'll defer and let them speak here a second. But I think what that tells me is that they are 100% solid behind our attempts and our mission and the things that we're doing. And they've been supportive across the board as much as they can.
I'm so sorry. Sorry, I just tripped.
There you go.
So I'll speak on behalf of the sheriff as well. Our local, our state and federal partners have been outstanding helping us with these issues to speak of. You'll notice bullet 6 down there, we talk about Project Safe Neighborhood. That is really marshaled by our U.S. attorney and done a great job getting all of the resources together, going after the worst of the worst. And I can let him comment on that. The same with our state partners. The question that was asked to me a while back to ask the AG for extra bodies, didn't have an opportunity to do that. We had a funeral that postponed that meeting. However, the state of Montana tells me that they have sent, without any asking, 13 total resources from various places over the past 3 years, and then additional highway patrol. And we can go over this in detail a little bit, and Steve can add if he wanted to. So, in general, that's what the plan is, not going into tactics. We really do want to increase our capacity if we can. Understand that we are hard capped by a budget, which allows us an authorized strength, which we're almost there. I think we're down 3 or 4, so doing a really good job hiring people. That helps out immensely. We know specifically that increased officer presence deters crime. You'll hear that in the next report on downtown. We saw that. So we want to build on that, and we want to be proactive. And the proactive groups right now are the ones that are effective in taking care of the problems that we're seeing. Understand that our patrol division basically responds to calls for service. And we want to be properly staffed where we can be proactive, be seen, be in the neighborhoods rather than just running from call to call to call. Last week, I went to 2 briefings. There were 12 and 14 officers, not counting commanders, respectively. I had to ask whether it was a holiday. It wasn't, but our hiring and our staffing paid dividends there. It allowed us to double up 2 beats and put 2 cars working traffic. That's where we need to be all the time, and we're not. Our average on patrol was in 2022 10.3 or so officers per shift, average. And you know that our minimum staffing is at 9. Statistics show that we need 16 officers per shift to alleviate any saturation issues. That means where nobody's phone calls are being held. That's a lot of officers and some money. So those are things that we're working on. We will have that discussion. In the meantime, we continue to leverage our partners, continue to leverage everything as we can. And I'm glad there's a lot of community discussion here. We cannot do this by ourselves. We need help from the community on the front end of stuff, especially the prevention and a lot of the intervention stuff. I am fortunate to have a great partnership with Dr. Garcia and SROs there. Immediately on board to start a gang reduction program. So moving forward with that and adding some additional staff as their levy allows as well. Mayor, with your permission, I would ask our U.S. Attorney to comment, if you would, please.
That's great. That's what I was going to do too.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Chief. Appreciate the comments. So Jesse Laszlovich, again, United States Attorney, I have the privilege of being the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer for the state. And I want you to know there's no higher priority for us than fighting violent crime here in Billings. And I want to talk specifically about some of the action steps that are outlined here, taking the lead from Council Member Owen when it comes to specificity and measurable steps. I want you to know, I know this has been a discussion between the City Council and other members of the city, and then of course with Scott and the sheriff, with the county. Don't forget about us. We are here. We have people who live in this community, our federal prosecutors, our folks at DEA and ATF and Homeland Security and the Marshals, FBI, all want to do their part in fighting this. So let me just tick off a few things, if I may, Mr. Mayor. So the first step in using data to focus intensive policing efforts in high-risk areas. Two things here, and we've been working closely with the chief and the sheriff, Steve's folks, as well as our other federal partners. There has to be a free-flowing exchange of intelligence. I started in this job in June of last year. It wasn't where it needs to be. It's still not where it needs to be. But I think with the leadership and partnerships that are taking place here, where we're exchanging a free exchange of intelligence on really violent people, then we'll get there, and we are getting there. Like I said, we're not there quite yet. The second thing is, especially as it relates to gun violence, the ATF has a gun crime intelligence analytics section that they are bringing here to Montana. I talked to the chief about this here in a few weeks just to summarize very quickly, where they're able to track guns. And I don't want people to think that this is about the feds tracking lawful gun owners, but guns that are used in the commission of a crime. They gave us a demo in Memphis, which is full of gun violence. And based on all these analytics, they were able to trace most of the few guns that were being used in most of the crimes to 7 people in Memphis. So they're marshaling resources there to track and or not to track, but to investigate and ultimately detain and indict those 7 people with the hope that that'll make a difference. That goes to the data part of this action step. So your support of that through the chief will be especially meaningful as we work on that. And then the only other thing, and I know you said 60 seconds, I was holding my comments, Mayor, not speaking the first 2 topics. Project Safe Neighborhoods is a key initiative, and I would ask for your continued support of that. Let me just tell you what that is. That is a focused effort with all of our partners. So our federal partners, our city and county partners, and our state partners, where we meet monthly. We have targets, and we are exchanging intelligence. And just to give you an idea of the cases that we have generated since that program started in 2017, there was 42 PSN cases. We only have 2 areas in Montana that are PSN areas. One is Missoula and the other's here. Most of our work in the PSN space is happening here because that's where the crime is happening. Not to say that it's not happening in Missoula, but it's more here than there. So 42 in 2017. In 2022, it was 323 cases that we've indicted. As of the end of November of this year, 363 that we have indicted. Now, of those cases, that includes firearms and violent crimes, in 2022, so just firearm-related offenses, 122. That's not just someone using a gun in the commission of a crime, but someone who is a prohibited person. So their criminal history and where they have been found guilty, they're prohibited from owning a firearm, and yet they are possessing or using one in the commission of a crime. And in the federal system, if you're committing a felony in doing so, whether you're possessing, discharging or brandishing it, then you're subject to mandatory minimum sentences, and we use that aggressively. But 122 of those in 2022. In 2023, it was 221. So the numbers keep rising, and this is a long way of saying you're talking about a lot of these issues that you're facing, and the people who have said we're all in this together, you're absolutely right. We are a part of that as well, and there are things that we can do. Work closely with Scott to take cases from the county and prosecute them federally, and so that those folks are ultimately sentenced to federal prison. We don't have one in Montana. They're sentenced out of state, and we're able to marshal the resources of the federal government to hold really bad and dangerous people accountable.
Thank you for your help. Steve, anything you want to weigh in on this topic?
Sure, and I'll be brief, and following Jesse's always a tough spot. We are, and the Attorney General has been very proactive in giving us resources for the DCI Narcotics Bureau here in Billings. My whole state staffing, approximately 30% of my agents are here in Billings, and we are embedded with the HIDA, embedded with our federal partners, and then over the last 2 years we've added 4 narcotics agents positions over here, specifically focused on working under the umbrella of Project Safe Neighborhoods, chasing suspects that are trafficking in dangerous drugs, and then especially focusing on those with history of violent crime, history of weapons offenses, and then also committing offenses or trafficking in areas that are experiencing violent crime. So working in conjunction with our partners in the city. And additional resources that DCI has brought to bear. We had an additional, we're backfilling it now, but an additional DCI agent position assigned to help with the strangulation cases here in Billings. And that's over on our major case side. And we have added an additional position on that side that's coming online this year. MHP has a number of resources here. And the Forensic Science Division has a lab on this side that I know has made, efforts to support prosecutions with the County Attorney's Office with ongoing and active in progress cases. I could go into detail on the exact positions that we've added. But what I will say is that we are very committed to being part of a collaborative solutions with what's going on with violent crime and then with the Narcotics Bureau specifically on addressing the drug trafficking, fentanyl, methamphetamine, and the violent crime that's in conjunction. So that's I'm honored to be in the room with you and help work on solutions.
Thank you for your help as well. Question for this group and anybody, do we need, at the city, to be advocating for, with our legislators, for a sentencing enhancement for use of a stolen firearm in the commission of a crime? I don't believe such thing exists, right? Is that a good idea, a bad idea? Councilmember County Attorney Twito is giving me an evil eye or a squinch nose.
No, I'm just thinking, I've had a long day, but you already have a weapon enhancement up to 10 years for any crime involving a gun. You're adding stolen, so you want to make it...
Obviously, there's an enhancement for use of a firearm, but what about a stolen firearm? There's no difference if you commit a crime with your own gun versus a stolen gun, right?
Right, so it just adds another element to prove. You still get the 10 years, so yeah, fine. If you want to get more penalty, I'm fine for that. I'm a prosecutor, that's fine. But you already have 10, which is one of our better enhancements that we have. Like, I did an interview today for the news station on all the gang activity. Our gang statutes are terrible. How about updating our gang statutes so if you use a weapon in furtherance of gang activity, nail them for that enhancement? Right now, the enhancement is like, providing a gun in the gang world is like a misdemeanor in Montana. So maybe that's where you should focus your efforts.
Our note takers get that. Yep. Thank you. Other questions for our partners? Councilmember Boyette.
So Chief, I'll put you on the hook here.
how many officers do we have? And then is there a national standard that says 20,000 people, how many officers should we have?
Councilmember, our authorized strength is 167 from top to bottom. There are numerous formulas out there on what staffing should be. The speaker earlier referenced officers per thousand, which just tells you how many officers you have per thousand. Other than that, not much use. It's easy math, although I couldn't quite get it when I was working on it. So, we use, there's a couple workload studies that add credibility and data behind the numbers that we present, as opposed to me just standing up and throwing a number at you. As indicated, one of those suggested mathematically that we need to have 16 officers on per shift in order to handle the caseload that we're doing right now. That does not include command staff, and that does not include our detective division. I've asked them to do some research on whether it's how many cases are appropriate or population or how big the department is. So I'll be looking forward to getting some sort of assessment. I think right now the majority of them are carrying 20 plus cases, and most of them are felonies. More? Back there? Okay, detectives say there are more, but I take that with a grain of salt.
Give you one thumb, so it's
One
one more.
thumb, yeah, 21.
So let's go be realistic, though. Does it tell us that we need more police officers on the street, basically?
Absolutely.
If so, how many?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, I would say 20, based on our statistics. Would be realistic.
Thank you.
Some of the other math would not be.
Okay, other things. Councilor Rowan.
I just have a couple questions, if
Go
that's
ahead.
all right. I just wanted to ask Mr. Lazovich and Mr. Crawford. I heard both of you when you talk more in terms of people, high-risk individuals, targeted individuals, rather than the crimes themselves. And I'm wondering if that's a recommendation that you would have for us locally. I mean, I see our strategies here, they tend to talk about going after certain crimes. I hear you guys talking about going after certain people. Do you think we need to pivot in the way that we think about this strategically, having a, top 100 high-risk offenders, and we will do whatever it takes to go get them? Is that something we should be talking about differently?
Can I bail them out, council member?
No. I'll let you follow up, but I want to hear what they say first, if that's all right, Chief.
Well, what I can say, thank you for the question, is that we do find that by surgically focusing on, you'll find a large number of offenses being committed by a small group of individuals. And so we are working our proactive narcotics cases, and we are developing sources and paths. We identify the ones that are the higher risk, the higher threat, right? And then focus on that. Not completely ignoring the other information or the other cases that we can pursue. And so I think there is value in that, in focusing on individuals, not as solely as another tool in the toolbox.
I would say they're not mutually exclusive. Obviously people are committing crimes, so we necessarily have to target those who are the biggest threats to the community. We know that based on what they are doing in the community, and that leads us, of course, to prioritizing the crime itself. For us, we know that here gun violence is a huge issue, and that was before this past month. So that has been a priority where we have focused on, when we get those referrals, is there a way to make sure that we can prosecute those? I've talked to people around the table about this, where there was concern about our office not wanting to prosecute those offenses. I've hoped we've allayed some of those concerns since I've had those conversations, but it turns the focus to the crime itself. So I know it doesn't answer your question or satisfy you, but I don't think they're mutually exclusive.
Go ahead. And it looks like Sheriff Lippert.
Yeah, just Councilmember Owen, that's something that I've been thinking about too, going after the crime. Well, what these guys are talking about as far as going after the person. But there absolutely is a nexus to going after the opportunities for crime. Some of the biggest things we're seeing right now are thefts of cars, thefts of items, guns out of cars, burglaries and stuff like that. And I can't tell you how many times I tell people, try to remind people, take the keys out of your cars, don't leave your guns in your cars, don't leave your laptops in your cars and stuff, because it's providing opportunities. Those are the kind of crimes that the normal citizen can prevent by simply not leaving those opportunities for them. And then, make sense?
Yes.
Thank you, Chief. Was there something you want to add?
I concur with what they said. I would say that we also have, on our proactive side, task forces that they are pretty much mandated on what it is that they're going after. They're gonna run into people, obviously, but our drug unit, for example, their mandate is to disrupt and dismantle drug traffic organizations. That's what they're going after. And then you have the guns, we have street crimes, now with the nexus to the gang stuff. So yes, we're looking at crimes, but as they say, people are doing those, we're going to get.
So you feel like we have a target list?
I'm not supposed to say target.
And then Mayor, I just have one last question.
Yes.
So we've seen this kind of spike now for about 6 weeks. And for 6 weeks, the chief has dutifully showed up and answered a lot of questions from us, and I'm grateful for that. But we obviously have to do more. We have a room full of people here who want us to do more, who want us to do better. It can't just be about coordination. It's clear that coordination is an important thing, and data sharing is important. I cannot agree with you enough that data sharing is important. What's missing? What do we have to do better? Is this list enough, in the opinion of the four of you or anyone else who wants to jump in? Or are we missing a major strategy that we could do as a city of Billings or Yellowstone County right now, recognizing the legislature's out for another year and a half? What could we do right now? What's missing? What do we tell the people sitting behind you guys who are frustrated?
Well, I would say what's missing here is not something you can do anything about.
Great story.
Well, and candidly, it's us. So, and at least on the federal side, we talk about resources. We need more resources too. People think the federal government is, unlimited, certainly bigger than city government. I understand all that, but when it comes to boots on the ground, we had 4 new prosecutors that we hired. 2 of them were here. 1 specifically for violent crime. You may not think that is a lot, but it was a big deal. First time in over a decade that we got new people, new positions for our office. That doesn't do anything though if we don't have boots on the ground with all of our federal partners. I've talked to leadership for the FBI. We need more agents here, but they don't just come off of a tree. So when I say there's not anything you can do about it, there really isn't, other than, yeah, that's a great idea, do it, and then you're leaving it to us to bring in those resources. It's not just 20 more cops with the chief. That's important. It's not just with Mr. Crawford. It's also us as well, bringing those more additional resources. How do we do that?
Yeah.
We need money.
We need money from voice,
Congress.
right? We need a shared community
So
voice.
people who are running for Congress or the Senate, they have the power of the purse, and they appropriate the money, and then we go and hire people. We just can't do it alone.
Thank you very much. Steve, you wanted to comment on that?
Mayor, I'll defer to Mr. Twito. He's had his hand up, but I would like to go after him if I may, please.
That'd be great, Scott.
So just something that I think is a potential solution that you should look at to get to what Councilperson Owen is talking about is maybe the city, you should look at the Tampa model, because they've seen a massive reduction in crime. Essentially, the component there is you do identify people that are high risk, and the chief's folks are working on that. They're working on a point system through the Project Safe Neighborhoods, is crime analysts. So you already have that work going. You identify those people that are, whatever the categories are, and the folks from Tampa will present. I listened to this, it was fabulous. And then you go after them. You go after them, it doesn't matter. You don't wait for the crime. You don't try to build up the big drug conspiracy. You nail them for jaywalking if you have to nail them for jaywalking. If they're someone to use guns in your community, you tell them, that's it. And then if you get them on anything else, you go all the way. That's a great idea. I don't want to speak for those folks, but I would encourage you guys to educate yourself about the Tampa model.
Okay, Samson model, bullet point. Steve?
I just want, U.S. Attorney Lazlovich was kind of looking down this direction. I'll be happy to raise my hand. I was the person that contacted him, and he's done a heck of a job in increasing the number of prosecutions of folks that are prohibited from having guns, i.e. all of our felons on supervision. Everybody signs that Title 18 subsection 922 subsection G1. Is that correct, Council?
That's right.
And they're prohibited from having guns. If we catch them with guns, we need to prosecute them for having guns. We weren't getting unilateral cooperation across the entire state, but with Mr. Lazlovich making it clear to his staff that we're going to do that, there are folks identified in the U.S. Attorney's Office that that's all they're doing is gun prosecutions. So we have to take it from the chief and from the sheriff and from the parole officer when they come across these folks that are prohibited to move that stuff forward in the form of a report and evidence to the U.S. Attorney's Office so that Mr. Lazlovich's office can prosecute them federally, where they do 85% of their time, less the 54 days a year good time they earn after the first year. So on a 10-year sentence to the federal prison, you serve 8.5 flat. So what does that say? That says they're not in our community committing crimes for the next 8.5 years. Because, and Mr. Lazlovich may correct me, I think it's 2 to 10. Is that the range?
Depends, yeah, but it's fair.
Okay, thank you for making that point. Well, we're looking down this corner. Before we move off this topic, we hear a lot about Deer Lodge capacity. We know that our own jail capacity is an important part of this issue. And during COVID, we had as many as 100 DOC inmates that potentially, my understanding, could have been in Deer Lodge, but were not. You had your own problems with COVID, of course. Those numbers have come down. Thank you very much. It frees up space locally. Katie, can you tell us where we're at when it comes to people in the Yellowstone County detention facility that could or couldn't be in Deer Lodge? I know you now sending 100 plus to Arizona, things like that, could be maybe building some capacity. Where are we at in getting people to Deer Lodge from Yellowstone County?
Thank you, Mayor. I can absolutely speak to that. I talked to the warden up at MSP this morning about this very subject. I was wondering where we're at with moving the 120 inmates out of state. They have moved 60 of them so far, and the other 60 will probably be moved within a month or two. Last month, the Department of Corrections moved 30 inmates from YCDF to MSP. There's 12 left at YCDF right now that need to go to MSP. When you think about this, you also need to remember that last month alone, we had 9 new sentences out of the district court to MSP. So generally speaking, we're probably always going to sit between 10 to 15 ready to be transferred.
Okay, that's a seems like a manageable number, a big improvement over 100 or 50. Sheriff, I want to ask you if you want to comment on that situation anyway.
Oh, I can tell you that DOC has done a wonderful job getting people out of the jail. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's emptying out the jail. We've got a 434 bed capacity and we're hovering up around 600. So when you compare that, for example, to like Ada County, Idaho, they just went out for a bond and that bond got shot down. They were looking to add 294 beds. They've got 1,115 bed capacity jail and they're at about 1,000 people in there. So they're trying to get their jail added onto right now, and they're not even at capacity right now. So I don't know why because they're one of the unusual ones that the norm is to run about 80% of your jail capacity and stuff, but it's not happening around the country. It's like that, and they're trying to stay ahead of it. It didn't happen. I think here the public understands now that is a big part of the equation when it comes to public safety. And hopefully, and you know as well as I do that the commissioners are looking at future right now as far as the expansion for a holding facility, temporary, and I know that's coming up. And then the big picture thing too, that's actually been, they've been in communication with an architect, and that's a plan that is coming together right now. So.
Sounds like we've got a solution. We just have to send some of our jail inmates to Idaho. Okay, we're at 30 minutes on this item.
Can I just, I'm sorry,
last,
Mr. Mayor,
we've got time.
I apologize. I know you're wanting to move on. I do certainly with your comments at the beginning, talking about, and it's come up multiple times about our youth, and we know, of course, some of the recent shootings have involved 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, and you talk about solutions, and Scott, I don't know if you, I'm not familiar with the statutory scheme, but at least on the federal side, you should just know there are hurdles for us in order to indict a juvenile and try them as an adult. I understand why those hurdles are there, but I think it's worth a candid discussion. Certainly if Scott has similar hurdles on the state side, you talk about possible legislative solutions, it's something that is worthy of discussion. I know on the federal side, is a little more difficult, but I wanted to call that out with juveniles being a lot of the reason for the issue. What can be done, if anything, legislatively?
I think that is such an important issue. I'm just going to ask us to focus on that for a minute. I'm going to give our county attorney an opportunity to comment. How do we deal with dangerous youth offenders, especially when we don't have incarceration facilities? Can you tell us a little bit more about that process, what those resources are or are not? And I do want to make sure we hear from Councilmember Geese, who's patiently had his hand up. We want to recognize him as well. So, Scott, do you want to comment on the topic?
A juvenile offender, anyone under the age of 18, is subject to the Youth Court Act if they commit a criminal offense. The Youth Court Act has certain enumerated offenses, your violent crimes, most of them, not all of them. I tried to update it in the last legislative session and it died. But for homicide, those sort of things, allow us to keep those juvenile offenders in district court or adult court. Okay, so some of the recent shootings that we had, those folks are under the age of 18. They're in the youth court, or excuse me, they're in the adult court, but they have the option to transfer back to the youth court if the court allows. There's a statutory framework that is the guide for the court in making that determination. Obviously, the seriousness of the offense, if it's such like a homicide, we argue to keep it in adult court because it allows us a variety of things. Greater penalties, because a penalty for a juvenile offender is only up to a certain age and then it's just done. The Supreme Court, Montana, just recently sent us a little curveball on a case as far as the transfer statutes go in the Youth Court Act, but that's kind of it. Then even if they are convicted in adult court, let's say they stay in adult court and they're not transferred back to youth court, they still get, because they're juveniles, they get the benefit of the Criminally Convicted Youth Court Act that is an automatic review of their sentence by the district court for certain intervals, and then a formal hearing prior to them reaching the age of 21. So if they're convicted, they still get that benefit. We go through those all the time. It's my opinion. There's certain age requirements. Right now, the way the Youth Court Act exists, it's in my discretion if a crime is committed by a youth greater than the age of 12, if it's serious enough. Homicide, rape, those all fit into that category. And then again, it's the check with the court to see if it should stay in adult court. And then even if it stays in adult court and they're convicted, they have that Criminally Convicted Youth Court Act. So that's kind of how it works for serious offenses. There's a lot of other things that go on, but that's kind of it in a nutshell.
What did you want to change, and should we help on
Well,
that?
we haven't changed the Youth Court Act in 30 years, and we have these horrible crimes that are violent, like sexual servitude of children, that we just didn't have when we created the Youth Court Act, and I felt that should be a transferable offense, and so I wanted that on the list, among other things, like aggravated burglary. And there were some other things we wanted to change as well, just some procedural stuff, not to impact anyone's rights, but to make it simpler in the system, to make less paperwork, less reason to have more lawyers, that sort of thing. It didn't make it through. It was a good effort. The Billings contingent was very supportive of it. All the legislators in Billings were very helpful, and a lot were. It just didn't make it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I ask,
Chris?
Can I ask Mayor and Scott, are there, outside of the violent crimes for juveniles, can you talk about some areas maybe work could be done? Is it too naive to think of crimes by juveniles earlier on so that they don't get to that point? So can you, are there some things we can do so that
the
you
youth
don't
court
wait
system is set up that way in Montana. So you try to handle things when it's lower level crimes with what we call court services, which is really a branch of our youth court. They have, in the superintendent's schools, they have juvenile probation officers on lower level things to try to work with those kids, to rehabilitate them. They handle a lot of things informally. It's only when I get a petition request to file an actual action in the youth court or into the district court from those folks that I take action. A lot of it's outside of me. And so they already kind of do that. I think to get to your point though, as far as resources go, and this kind of dovetails into some of your other bullet points here, that subcommittee that I put together, the CJCC, is actually looking at maybe a expansion or some sort of increase in resources for our juvenile detention facility and how that relationship works at the Ted Lechner Center. So they're gonna look at that as well.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Neese has been very patient. Councilmember Neese, are you still with us?
I am.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to say I think the list that here is a good list, and I think it, as the chief said, this is an enforcement list. But I think when we look at a list of what we're looking for how to reduce violent property crime in lots of different ways, just not enforcement. And so I think there's a couple things that are not so much enforcement here, but I think for the most part, I think we're missing that community element in this list. I think that is something that we need to take a look at how we can add the community. I think the chief mentioned some earlier things in there when there's a victim who's in a hospital to intervene that way. That would possibly reduce that violent retaliation crime. And so those are the things that maybe they carry over across lines a little bit. But I think that we need to really make sure we're involving the community more in this section. Someone mentioned the Tampa model. That's great. I've looked at the Omaha 360 model a little bit. We need to come up with a model ourselves, that the Billings model that is gonna hold what's really right for our community. But I think this list is missing a lot of the community side of this. The other thing, Mayor, I think that I want to ask. Actually, I saw Chris just walked away, so I will ask the chief. He may know about this. Is the chief, you mentioned that we need another, I think you said 16 officers. Now, we just went through a CPSM report just a few years ago. We were initially looking for, based upon your recommendations, that we needed another 20 or 16 or some number of officers at that time. But after the CPS report, we found out we could do things differently, better, and based upon our current situation, with a lot less officers, and it worked well. We went up public safety mill levy for that amount, and the citizens approved that. What I'd like to know is, Chief, has there been discussion? Are you working on updating that report so that we can have some actual good statistical numbers of what this city needs now, instead of just trying to pull out a number saying, I think it's 16?
Certainly, council member, that was one of the things I referenced was the workload study. And then, of course, put that in tandem with all our annual report numbers, and would have asks or recommendations as we go forward. You'll notice that one of those bullets is budget allowing. So we certainly understand that that is a budgetary consideration right now without any other means of revenue.
Yeah, I think maybe we should add into that section then, Chief, something about updating the CPSM report for the Billings PD at this time. Some way that we can look forward to really get a good number for what we need for staffing.
And Councilmember Neese and members of the public and anybody here, I'll just mention that in objective number 8, one of the things we're not talking about tonight is titled Maximize Effectiveness of Public Safety Services. And the second bullet there specifically is to conduct an updated CPSM analysis for the police and fire departments. So we could have it either place, but that the staff did add a point to that effect. So thank you for highlighting.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate that. And again, I think we really need to find ways to add the community into this section.
Very good, thank you. Council, guests, before we move on to our fourth item, anything on this third item?
One more question.
Councilman Rowe?
I guess I would ask Chief or anyone who you want to bump this to. I said earlier and I'll say again, I think if we're going to have these objectives, we need some targets. Can we get to a numerical target? Is it reduce violent crime by 15%? Is it roll it back to 2019 levels? Can we get a target?
Yes,
What will it take to get us there?
we pick it and go, as you indicated.
Who's the we?
Previously. What we think is going to be realistic. We do have some statistics going back 10 plus years, and where we, after we applied for resources from CPSM, made those adjustments, we did see the decrease, so we can extrapolate what that is and give a percentage. That's what I would recommend is X percent lower than the previous year.
So will it take a month for us to get that number? 3 weeks? Like when could council have that for discussion?
As soon as we decide what it is. So it's easily to pinpoint one. I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, so we need to be accurate on what it is we're looking at and realistic.
Okay, thank you, everybody. With that, it's a minute after 8 o'clock. If we spend another half an hour, it'll be at about 8:30. Some final wrap up. We still have to have some further public comments. So we can take a break, but the problem with taking a break is it always costs you at least 10 minutes and there's a lot of confusion. My inclination is just say go use the bathroom if you need to. Don't worry, but we press on. Is that okay? Okay, nobody's throwing things at me.
I have a question.
You know, we're not at that point, Mr. Buchanan. When we get to public comment, we can pose that. Maybe we can come back and try to answer the question. Otherwise, we'd have 30 questions, I'm afraid. So with that, then the last item is the specific focus on downtown safety. Again, you've got 3 or 4 bullet points on your sheet as a starting point, but we want to make sure we add to that list good ideas. We do have, I think, a presentation, or at least not a presentation, but at least an introduction by Officer Richardson, and who's one of our downtown officers. So I'm going to ask you kind of introduce yourself a little bit, and
Sure.
That'd be great.
My name is Moses Richardson. I'm one of 3 downtown resource officers. Our position is paid for and funded out of the VA. Our main goal is downtown safety. Our jurisdiction that we work in is within the Mid District itself, but we do go outside the Mid District. What we try to do is try to be visible. In the summer, you will see us on bicycles. We're in the high vis shirts. Since I am a fair weather cyclist, in the winter, you will see us in a car that has a yellow stripe on it. So we're always trying to be seen downtown. So when it comes to downtown businesses, I know there's a phrase of community policing that gets thrown out there quite a bit. That's something we actually try to do downtown. We get to try to know a lot of the business owners. A lot of the business owners know us by name. We know their problems, and we try to be very proactive in dealing with some of the problems downtown. Some of the programs we have for the businesses downtown, through the DVAs, we have SEPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design. It's something that's free through the DVA. The other thing we do is they can fill out trespass agreements to help deter loitering, stuff like that on property. The third thing we do is we will actually show up to businesses and help them de-escalate situations when they're dealing with somebody in crisis. The other thing we do is we work closely with a homeless outreach team, which is peer support through Rimrock. Sometimes you might see them riding with us. We deal a lot with the homeless downtown. A lot of the resources for the homeless are in the downtown area. So the HOT team will be with us as we engage with some of the homeless. The other thing we do through Rimrock, also with cooperation with the jail and the city attorney's office, is we have what's called a MAP program. It's a motivated addiction alternative program. So what that is we're trying to defeat the cycle of someone that's homeless, having an addiction problem, going to jail, coming right back on the street. So what we try to do is divert them from that and try to get them into treatment. So sometimes it just comes down to either you go to jail or you can accept treatment. So that's mostly what we're doing downtown.
Okay, very good. You guys know the problems. I'm going to just ask you, Officer Richardson, what do we see in the way of numbers for offenses downtown? It's a bit of a softball because my understanding is we've seen a decline, but I don't know the details. I'm not 100% sure of that. Can you address that issue?
I honestly don't have numbers.
Okay. Okay, very good. Back to the table. Councilmember Purington.
So this is a question, I think, for the chief. In going to the task force, we get those task force numbers. And if I remember right, last month, because they have the different types of crimes in the different areas, task force areas. And it seems to me that the crime in downtown is a lot lower than a couple other areas in Billings, whether it's portions of the Heights, Midtown, and I think North Park area. So my question is, as we focus so much on downtown with 3 officers, and I know that the DBA is paying for those officers, to me it would be nice if we could kind of pick those guys up from time to time and put them here, pick them up, put them there. Is there some sort of a strategy in addressing these different areas where there are hotspots in Billings?
Council member, not specifically with the DBA. If the wheels fall off and it's all hands on deck, then they're gonna go help. The situation I described earlier when we were properly staffed allowed that exact scenario. We had 2 of our higher call beat areas doubled up and then put two that were dealing specifically with traffic. The supervisor could have put 4 in one area if they wanted to. That is the beauty of being properly staffed and having those extra bodies. And then they can move people around as needed.
Chris, our city administrator, you want to comment on that issue?
The other piece, there's a fair amount of evidence out there that this works. Business improvement districts, hiring focused, whether they're specific actual sworn officers or security. And actually, we see it on a smaller scale in Montana. So I think potentially one of the goals may be encouraging more parts of the community to create their own business improvement districts and self-fund. Choose to do that out of the general fund, that's going to compete with everything else in the general fund, but there's a fair amount of evidence out there nationally that business improvement districts focused on improving safety work. And I think part of what you're pointing out is there's some proof that is working in Billings too. We just have one BID that uses its resources this way.
So just follow up, Mr. Mayor.
Please.
So some of those areas that you're talking about, there, and I'll say Montana Avenue, the business owners have come together and they're just hiring private security. So, which is fine. And then they have to wind up calling the police if there's an issue. I mean, I had a gentleman, he wants to do it in his neighborhood. There's another one that wants to do one up in the Heights. And I just see more of that. If you create a BID, we're going to have to hire more officers. And I don't know that the BID salary that they pay an officer is going to get us through hiring more officers. That's kind of my issue with that, is that's that reliance on government again, where I'm thinking, can't we do something in the community that would supplant that? I mean, I agree we need to hire more officers. Don't get me wrong on that one. But I'm just saying, when it's so specific to what you're hiring them for, then that's where I kind of see an issue.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, comments, bullet points? Chantel.
I work in close partnership with our downtown officers on issues that they face, as well as with the MAP program. Some things that I've seen that I'd like to call to the attention of council is that we are seeing a concentration of resources specifically for individuals that are unhoused in the downtown area, and I think we need to pay attention to that. If the goal is to incorporate and include individuals into our community, I don't think focusing entire city blocks and making it where those are designated areas for homeless people to be is very helpful for that. I do think that, I don't know if it could be a matter of how things are zoned, but I am concerned that we are concentrating people into an area where they are then excluded and not brought out into the broader community to receive services. The other thing that we experience as well, and I know that Judge Kolar has specifically been a great help in this area. We have an ebb and flow of the number of spaces that we're given in the jail as far as our program is concerned, to try to get people out into treatment and divert people out once they have multiple criminal charges that they're facing. So there have been times where we'll have 10 spaces for males and females, and all of a sudden that'll be taken away. We've been able to get some of the individuals in the jail on their warrants successfully, again with Judge Kolar's assistance and with the help of our downtown resource officers, identifying who their most problematic individuals are. But when we look at our jail space, for example, there was a day that we got an email where they said that they had 600 people. We went through and looked at it and pulled some statistics just on our own, and we saw that there was approximately 75 people in the jail on that given day that were either fed holds or were just there and had already been sentenced to the Department of Corrections. That's 70 to 75 spaces that we don't have for our local people to try to help get them into a diversion program and out into treatment. I just think of what we could do with that if we actually had those spots available to assist us in curbing these problems. So thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mayor, very quickly.
Chief.
Downtown issues primarily are quality of life. We have some crimes, but the co-occurring addiction, mental illness, the people on the streets, problems that we're dealing with, a little bit different than some of the other stuff. It makes some people nervous, others doesn't bother anybody, but whether it's the reality or the perception of, that's what's driving this goal for us, to make sure that our downtown image is good. Chief Valdez is here. They just brought a new crisis response unit online to help us with that diversion, along with the programs that Officer Richardson was talking about. The chief wanted to comment on that. It's been up and running for a few months. It's been extremely successful.
Yeah, Chief, that's, I think, really important. You're kind of the point of the spear now on a lot of these downtown issues. How's this going, and what can we do?
Well, as the chief said, it is successful. It is in its infancy stage right now. The initial purpose was that to get resources back online, such as our officers, fire department, and EMS. And it's proven itself so far. To this point, it's run roughly 270 calls, I believe, in the 2 months that it's been online. There's some good follow-up to get people back into definitive care, which is the other piece of that. So it's, like I said, it's infancy right now. I don't have good stats for you, but just off the cuff, it's.
Okay, thank you.
You will see, Mayor, not on tonight's list, but future list is growing both crisis response units to additional units, as well as the mobile response units, as those prove out to be successful.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Neese, I believe you have your hand up. Is that correct? If so, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I guess this question I have is mainly regarding the downtown. I kind of agree with Councilmember Purington when we look at some of the crime stats. And I recall downtown 30 years ago, it was a no-go in a lot of cases. And there was major crime downtown, and it has changed over the years. So downtown, there's a lot of good things that have happened and changed in the way, in what is going on downtown. And so when I look at what's happening there, I think we just added, the DBP just added another officer to the downtown on that. So I guess the question, I don't know if it's Officer Richardson or Chief, who can answer the question is, when you get assigned to the DPD to do this downtown, how much, where's your direction coming from? Are you answering to the DBA downtown, or are you planning your own approach, or is your plan directed by the chief and the Billings PD as far as how you approach the area of downtown?
And that was a question for Officer Richardson, is that correct?
Yeah, Officer Richardson, if you can answer that.
So you're correct, we just got a third officer, and all three of us downtown officers recently started this last year. So kind of what we did is we went almost to every business in the downtown area, trying to figure out what issues they were having, and just trying to address those issues. And one of the things we discovered was, like the chief said, we thought there was a false perception of downtown, and visibility was kind of key for them. And these businesses call us directly. So just letting them know, making sure they had our card, making sure they were able to call us, and we just respond this time.
Okay. So, that's one of these, again, when I look at the way you described how you guys interact with downtown, it's a much more community-based system. You know all your businesses, you know all the people, they contact you directly. It's a real model as far as trying to get the community involved and making sure that when the community sees something going on, they'll call you. And I think that's where, if we look at what downtown has done, and we look at where we're lacking in other areas of the community, I think we're going to see throughout this whole process, we're missing that community involvement to being able to work on this. And that's where the downtown it needs constant maintenance and improvement in different areas. But I agree, as Chris said, if there needs to be some additional bids, as I understand, there's no difference in your pay working downtown or an officer on the beat. It is your Billings PD. And so whether you're hired by the DBA or another bid on the eBird or something like that, it's all paid for by that organization to the city for your salary covered under the city. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but I think we need to maybe encourage that if we find hotspot areas to help increase, to kind of mimic what the downtown's doing. Whether it's Heights Main Street, which I've seen a whole lot more vagrancy and crime going along Main Street, or Grand Avenue. And so I would encourage that we look at what we've done here and the DBA and see if we can replicate it in other hotspots around the city.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll ask a question, which is, again, we want to always be focused on measurable results. The 4 bullet points here are pretty generic. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with any of them. Continued officer presence through added bike patrols, focused policing to improve officer presence, reduce theft and vagrancy, improve community business engagement, support downtown septic efforts. How do we measure when we're succeeding on that? I guess I'll first look to the chief, but anybody else who wants to weigh in. And again, are there any other bullet points? You want to be as specific as possible that we can add to that list. Chief, you want to talk about how we measure results?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I think, as before, that we just identify a percentage decrease that is our target based on the metrics from past years. I think we can come up with a number to shoot for.
Okay, Councilor Gillett.
Yeah, I think since the point was made that there aren't as so much crimes as it is kind of quality of life issues that there's a perception of crime there in downtown. I think a lot of it has to do with just vacant storefronts. When they're actually occupied, you don't find nearly the issues. So there are solutions that are outside of the realm of enforcement or policing. That if we really want to be looking outside the box, I mean, I think our TIF district does a really good job of trying to use our public dollars in a very to leverage private reinvestment. So I think we're doing some good things there, but just thoughts that maybe there are more things we can be doing out there as well. I think I know of some good things that are going to be happening in the next couple of years that will help us in that regard as well. But yeah, I think thinking outside the box there, of the policing realm is also.
So, Councilor Gillick, I'm going to put some words in your mouth. I'm hearing you say add a bullet that says something to the effect, improve downtown vitality generally.
Yeah, and I think, when we talk about targeting specific people in the sort of criminal element, I think when it comes to downtown properties, when you have certain landlords are not really, they're basically pretty absentee landlords, and those are the properties that start to get run down, and no one wants to lease space from them because they're not good, and so it'd be interesting to see if there's other communities that have been successful in dealing with that kind of situation.
If I can comment on Councilor Gillick's point, in any, I think we would all agree that one way to prevent crime is just to have good neighborhoods, where people know each other, they know what's going on, they feel invested in the welfare of their neighbor, they know who's not fitting into that neighborhood. Downtown's a kind of a unique animal, but it's still a neighborhood with people living. And it tends to be more anonymous because of the nature of the architecture, I guess. But we can do things to improve the sense of neighborhoodness in downtown Billings. These activities, just having block parties downtown, things like that. Those aren't necessarily the role of government, but we can help encourage them. So that'd be my pitch, is that we just develop that sense of identity for downtown residents, and that will help on crime. Councilmember Purington.
So Officer Richardson, do you know approximately the percentage of vacant properties downtown, and if those properties are causing issues in the downtown area?
The DVA knows that. Those are numbers I've heard over and over, so that's an easy thing to report out on.
That would be interesting to know that.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Boyette.
So Officer Richardson, I see that you have a bright yellow shirt on. Why do you want to do that versus the regular police department doesn't? We don't see the regular cop on the street because they drive a blue car that nobody even knows about. But we see you in bright yellow, and we see your cars with yellow stripes. Can you give us the difference between the two?
So we decided to do that so we're more visible downtown. The business of downtown knows that we're out patrolling. And another reason why we do it is we engage quite a bit with the homeless downtown. They know, and they actually call us bumblebees. So when we show up, they know they're talking to the bumblebees. They know that we'll actually engage and actually talk to them. They know that we'll try to offer them help, stuff like that. So when they see our car, they see us in their shirt, there's really no initial confrontation. They know most of the time we're there to help. So it's kind of the reasons why we wear different colored shirts.
Thank you very much. Senator Friedel, did you have a question or a comment?
Actually, it's bounced off of what the councilman said. The key word is they see you. When I grew up, my dad had a business, heating cooling business. He had 4 trucks, 4 vans, all looked alike. I could tell you, everybody thought my dad had 20 trucks because you saw the truck everywhere. Why is it that the United States, all of our law enforcement is wearing dark blue vehicles, tactical looking equipment? Why is European, we got you flashed just like that, neon, everything, they see you. If you want them to see you, you need to be visible. So instead of being in the shadows, come out into the light. If they see a big white and orange and neon green car going by that says law enforcement, you're more apt to be seen, which means that if you're seen, people have a tendency to not be as apropos to do the nefarious things they do with stealing stuff or whatever. So why haven't we had a conversation about going back to a situation where our law enforcement is seen to deter certain types of crime?
Our law enforcement representatives want to comment on that.
Some argument's been there for years on the subdued markings on the car versus not. Heard it. There's arguments both ways. I will tell you that majority of our patrol cars, we buy them the way that we get them, which is the blue. I don't know what other colors you get. And then the gray, we only have a handful, and those for traffic stuff. So, and this is our uniform and has been for years. So.
Conversation in the future.
Yeah, something worth
It is, yeah,
considering.
there's arguments both ways, exactly what you said. We even have it in-house.
Okay, visibility, good question. Sheriff?
Over the years, a lot of this comes from the officers and the deputies themselves about responding to a dangerous call. And probably if you got to be hiding behind a tree, so somebody's not shooting at you, when you're coming up on a domestic, you're probably going to want to be dressed more like this. They've even gone so far as white T-shirts are a thing of the past anymore because they always used to call it the triangle of death and stuff. So a lot of these things have come up. I don't know that there's really a rhyme or reason, but when it comes to your officers on the streets, they want to have the advantage. And the advantage is we see them before they see us, especially on the, now, in a case where you're working and you want to be high visibility, like in the downtown stuff, and I don't really have too much of that out in the county, but we do in some places. We want to be seen, but for the most part, I think it's an officer safety issue.
Interesting discussion. Other things, downtown safety, before we move on, Chantel.
Just wanted to bring up one more issue. It's come to my attention that the Montana Rescue Mission is one of the few, if not one of the only places in the state that will accept individuals that are discharging from Warm Springs. The reason I bring this up is I think that there needs to be better communication and partnership when decisions are made at the organization, a non-for-profit organization level, to determine whether or not our community has the carrying capacity to take on some of these things. I know that we do have a Billings Clinic and some of the other resources, but when an organization is accepting individuals and then not having any guarantee that they're actually going to stay or reside there, it becomes problematic immediately for law enforcement as well as for our fire department. So I just would hope that as much as our community partners want to be involved, that they'll also communicate and take into consideration the impacts that these decisions have on the community when they're made at the organization level. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, we're coming up on 8:30 hour. Anything else? Councilmember Owen.
Mayor, I think before we turn to public comment, I think you said there'd be another public comment period. I think before we do that, it would be useful to either discuss or hear from the city administrator what's next. What are we gonna try to accomplish in the next 30 days? Is this group gonna come together again? Like, what's going to happen with urgency? Because I think the public deserves to know that we're going to continue to be urgent, but so do our officers. I mean, we can't just make BPD be out there on their own. So I'd like to hear what's next. Or if not, let's talk about it.
Yeah, no, that's certainly part of the plan. We had a little bit of reference early on, but let's make sure we're done with the downtown part. I'm not seeing anybody else raising their hands, so we'll move on, and then we will open up for public comment, especially for anybody who didn't have a chance to comment earlier. So, Chris, you want to comment on that?
So 3 thoughts on this end. So 1, we know we've got other areas, one very significant area, which is true prevention. Whether this, I was going to depend on the feedback, frankly, from folks tonight. Is this the format we want to have the prevention dialogue in our community, or is there some other format we want to use? But so future dialogues on the components is 1. Ultimate ending piece, or not ending, but a component is the new council in the retreat format, spending, a couple of days focused on where are we going to target, where are we going to identify resource allocations. So that's future. What happens between now and then, this really is feedback I get from you guys, we give to each other about how to keep this conversation moving productively.
I should have phrased my question better.
Okay.
I meant specifically, we've talked about a lot, and so there's clearly planning and work and all that that will happen, and I agree with that. But in terms of the decisions, implementation, like what can we do right now to help our officers, to give the community insurance? Are we to the point where something will change in the next 30 days in the way we do business?
I can't answer affirmatively if something's gonna change. I know certainly for the departments, they're reacting and doing their work and adjusting daily. They're not waiting on the city council, their city administrator to give them direction. They're doing that professionally every day.
And here, maybe I'll just refer to the chief's list at our last meeting. Just had 10 items. I don't really remember any of those were dependent upon the city council. Some of them probably were, but some were definitely things you were going to proceed with. So, Chris, with your permission, if this is a good point, I would just ask the chief to weigh in on that because that's really directly response to Councilman Rowe's question.
Sure.
So, and the public may not have heard that. So, Chief, if I can put that question back to you.
Yeah, certainly. I think our talk last time pretty much was updates. But a short-term plan that we were looking at for specialized positions to modify hours. So we have presence later on in the evening. Our SROs are working with the schools, bring them up to speed on the issues that we're seeing. We are researching curfew violations, curfew sweeps, if you will. Be working with our PMP partners on probation sweeps there. Stop and talks, patrol trainings, which we're already having. Officers coming out, visiting. And then again, getting to things that we saw on the screen, identify, disrupt hangouts that we know. I referenced the example of parking lots of big box stores. If you're seeing spin out marks and donuts, whatnot, then that's where they're hanging out in the big parking lots. Want to target some of those, and this is specifically to the use that we're having problems with. Do some sweeps at the schools for narcotics and possibly weapons, and then looking at some other stuff. But that was just part of it. Address that one particular acute problem.
The other piece I guess I would add is, and it's not something new, it's happening, but I think hopefully tonight only helps the urgency. Almost nothing, as we all know, in the criminal justice system is held to the city. It all has interface, city, county, state, city, county, feds. So where we have these collaborative relationships, both on the policy level of elected officials and our staff, it is progressing in that area, because that is some of the areas where we've had breakdown. It's been acknowledged several different times tonight of we're better than we were 5 years ago, but we still have improvement to do relative to the absolute collaboration between city, county, state, and fed.
Yes, that's exactly what I was gonna suggest that we add. I think the one thing we could, Chief's list is awesome. I think the one thing we could add that we could work on with urgency over the next 30 days is at every point in the criminal justice system, figure out how we share data and intelligence better. It's a problem in the courts, it's a problem with prosecution, it's a problem. It's no one's fault, but it is a problem.
Yeah.
And I think we could make meaningful process if we started very systematically saying, where are the barriers that hamper public safety and how do we start tearing them down? That would be my suggestion for them.
Great. And a lot of the key players are in the room, and they've heard that, so go forth and conquer. All right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate your patience, members of the public who've been in the audience. Hopefully you've learned something. I know I have. But this is your chance to be heard. If you haven't already commented, we want to make sure you do have a chance before we adjourn tonight. That's the podium. You know the routine. You saw it before. We just ask that you not comment on something you've already talked about and keep your comments to 3 minutes and just make a little line up here.
Are we gonna be able to ask questions?
Go ahead. We can't guarantee, we'll try to answer at the end if we can, but we don't always have that dialogue situation. Sure. And for members, inevitably we'll probably will get some questions. We'll try to come back to the table. If you'd like to address what you've heard, we want to give people at the table an opportunity to do so. If there are questions, you may get a chance to ask them. Yes, go ahead.
Catherine Card, 2815 4th Avenue South. This last comment, this last discussion about including the community more, I think is an essential, an excellent way of thinking of it and a need. If you remember when I started raising questions a couple of years ago about local motorcycle gang, actual gang, how offended some of you got and mad and dismissive of my comments and my work. And that was real off-putting. Only a stubborn old lady would have stuck in with you guys. You need to make it easier for a community to participate and to make comments and to be open to learn. The community has tips. The community has information. The community has ideas. And it would be so important for you all as a group to respect the community's input. Make it easier to provide tips than what it is now. You call in and you don't necessarily see an officer very quickly, but there should be ways. There's lots of information out there in the community. And so I really urge you to be more receptive to people, even when they are presenting ideas that are not popular with you and you have some revulsion towards. To listen and to consider, I think, is important. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's David Irond. I live in Pam's district, and I'd like to speak tonight, and I'll try to be brief. My niece was murdered this summer in Fargo, North Dakota, domestic abuse. Her death, along with criminal activity in this town, has really raised my personal level of concern as a citizen. This evening, when the sheriff mentioned 15 new domestic violence arrivals at the jail, I was really struck. I wondered, due to jail space, whether the alleged domestic violence criminals essentially went in one door and out the other due to lack of space. The other issue of lax bond requirements mentioned tonight concerned me because we were very concerned about the perpetrator making bail. When I was the West High principal in the 90s, we had a heck of a gang problem in Billings. Some of you remember that. Drive-by shootings were not uncommon. We were concerned about opening school. George Slover and other community members convened a monthly meeting of school administrators and police force, and the sheriff implemented a constant pressure on the most identifiable criminals. That pressure paid off, and the community's safety improved markedly. That group met nearly monthly for a decade. The Slover model appears to have been adopted in Tampa. Throughout the evening, I've been interested in the action step bullets under each objective. Maybe I've missed it, but I didn't see a bullet for more cops under every single objective. When I was again West High principal, I interacted with a lot of law enforcement. I was always amazed at how few patrols were available at any one time. Tonight the chief mentioned 10. We need more cops. The other bullet under every objective I'm not seeing is expanded jail space. It is untenable to me that we can't properly jail criminals. The fact is, you can't have a safe community unless it's secure. There are lots of reasons criminality is growing in Billings. No matter what the reasons, we must secure the community. Bottom line, jail space is key to the beginnings of a solution. As the city becomes more secure and there's adequate space in our jail, we can forge solutions, continue to forge solutions through adequate and good programs. I know these action steps may have been discussed at other gatherings, so I apologize for pushing some redundant thoughts. But we're at a crossroad. I'm an advocate of expanded jail space. I'm an advocate of more cops. I'm an advocate of the slower model. We can do this. We can do this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. We're sorry for your family's loss. Next.
That's a really hard public comment.
Nice job, Dave.
Good evening. I am Clementine Lindley. I live in Ward 4, and today I'm here to share a personal story as a victim of property crime. I found myself 4 years ago navigating a situation that was handled in an unprofessional and borderline corrupt manner. I was lied to by law enforcement, and it tarnished my view of how safe I was in this community. This experience forced me to become my own detective and advocate, and ultimately it led to a difficult decision. We sold the house my children came home to protect my family. In another note, and addressing an earlier topic, I personally am a product of a high ACE score. My family was failing in many ways, but their success and parental involvement was exceptional, and it pushed me to overcome this adversity. And that and an amazing community of friends and family that wouldn't let me fail. We need to impact our children at a young age. As Councilperson Joy had mentioned, junior high is entirely too late. I knew by age 3, yes, 3, what cocaine looked and tasted like. I was aware of the actions around me, although I was not aware of the consequences. I see these objectives set before us today, and I'm so happy to see all these ideas and listen to Councilwoman Owen asking the tough questions and pushing for measurable results. Thank you. But I find myself seeing this as lip service that I received 4 years ago when I was told that the person who robbed me would be taken care of, when the person who robbed me also was known to law enforcement, and the only way I found her was because I contacted Kootenai County law enforcement after she robbed a house in Spokane, Washington, and was caught in Coeur d'Alene. I did that work, not anyone here. I drove to Spokane, Washington, and retrieved my own things, not anyone here. I was told my evidence that was pawned in Helena, Montana, was going to go to an evidence locker in Helena. The officer who was in charge of my case never reported that an item is stolen. It is gone forever, including heirlooms that my husband received from his passing grandparents. In the realm, with all of this, I hope we can see that the community support and buy-in is important. The realm of community support serves as a testament to the strength in my story, where we can find unity. A resilient community is one where members can actively support each other, and it's better equipped to overcome all of these challenges that we have. I thank you, all of you, for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Hi there, my name is Kylie Lammers. I also live in Ward 4, and some of you have heard from me before. I just felt I would be remiss to not come up here and talk to you today as a volunteer of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America and our Be Smart program, which is a responsible storage educational program. And I wanted to start off by just really encouraging us to have these difficult and scary conversations about firearms. I think it was the elephant in the room tonight, and we need to keep having these discussions. We started out talking about domestic violence, and I wanted to share some facts with you. A woman is 400% more likely to be killed when there is a firearm in the home of the offender. 400% more likely, that's 5 times more likely to be shot and killed. When someone's got to the point where they're strangling their partner, the next step is to kill them. And if they have access to a firearm, that's going to happen. So it's something we need to be taking extremely serious in our community, that we have such a high domestic violence problem. The other piece of that that's important to keep in mind is mass shootings. I am involved with the school district and working on a school safety program. My daughter today just texted me that she had a lockdown drill at senior to prepare students. And people need to understand the connection between domestic violence and mass shootings. It's and overall, a study was just recently released between 2014 and 2019. 2/3 of mass shooters, it involved domestic violence. It killed a spouse or someone related to, an intimate partner or someone related to that intimate partner. So this puts us all in danger, right? We have to get this under control, which you all know. But I just encourage us to talk about our gun violence issue. We are a culture rich in firearms, right? We all grew up this way. Most of us are probably firearm owners. But we also need to preach being responsible firearm owners, right? And I really loved and appreciated Councilman Neese's request to involve the community. Monster at Action and Be Smart is a nonprofit organization right here in your community. We've been working really hard since 2016 and we want to help. And we have funding and the ability to help. We have the educational pamphlets. We have all of this. We can help if you let us. The first thing that comes to mind, we talk about trusted messengers. It might not be me as a woman and a mom, but we can help come up with something where we could potentially offer a public service announcement. All of this gun violence is putting our law enforcement at risk and in danger every day, every time they go to work for us. It's putting all of us in danger. Let's get the message out that it's okay to own firearms as long as we're responsible. People should not be getting them out of people's cars and committing crimes. So I have lots more to say, but that's what I'm going to say for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. My name's Ione Young. I live at 2238 Barclay Lane, Billings, Hams District, Ward, whatever it's called. I'm so glad to see this group together tonight and all these community members here to talk about this problem. I think people have been talking in their homes, in their neighborhoods, and wherever else they congregate for a long time, and it's really good to see this group here. And I hope that you do something about it. I too kind of believe that some of it is lip service, heard some of the same comments over and over again. For a long period of time, and it's ridiculous. Some of the things I heard tonight about, and I've read, people with restraining orders against them who have threatened to kill their family get to keep their gun. For Pete's sakes, what are we talking about here, people? That's nuts. There's a sheriff in Forsyth who threatened to kill his family. He used to those things escape. Crimes are committed in Billings everywhere with people who aren't supposed to have guns, or they have guns. Why do they have guns? I mean, what are we not doing here or seeing? So I agree about the elephant in the room, guns. I appreciated Zach saying tonight, we have to talk about this. This isn't something we have to say it. Kylie said it. We need accountability. One of the things I noticed in all of these and in the discussion, some really great bullets. I mean, oh my gosh, they could really improve our city. But there are no timelines. Like, when are we going to do these things? When are we going to sign the commitment to, let me find my a memorandum with the YWCA. Is that gonna be this year, next year? That's just an example, I'm not about that. But none of them have a time frame or percentages, so we know how we're going to improve. We need more activities for kids in this town. Very much so. Just so many good ideas, and I hope that we will do something. The other thing I wanted to say, and I'll finish up here, is I was so pleased to see you, Mayor, Chris, Scott, who stood up and did in your press conference and said, lock up your guns. Tell some more people about that. We really need that to go viral.
Thank you very much. Other comments?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for your hard work. I remember I live on the south side. They call me Southside Mike. Mike Gakwich, House District 51. But I remember going to the bank when there were gang problems that were being called by Mr. Sellover. I have 5 kids, and we were growing up still on the south side, and a teenager was shot and killed in a drive-by shooting 3 houses from where we live. I've been shot at a couple times as well in the past too. So one of my messages is gratitude for what you're doing, and that we are a resilient community. Chief, thank you, and Sheriff, thank you for your hard work. You are an inspiration to me. I wanted to just follow up on a couple things. Is that Senator Friedel is here, Senator McGilvery is here, Representative Oblander is here, Representative Seekins Crow is here, and myself. So we are at the table. We don't want to be on the menu. So we're here to support you. We're here to ask you about policy, and don't start talking about policy in December of next year. It's way too late, and that's a lot of times why we don't get it done. So if you want us to carry your policy, let us know about it now. And you've got some great people, 4 of them at least, right here, that are wonderful, and I'm stepping up to the plate. I wanted to also, I talked to the mayor today, and he invited me just to briefly share about our commission. I'm honored to be on a commission on behavioral health. And we are hitting the ball out of the park, I believe. It's a House Bill 872, a $300 million bill on behavioral health. Judge Kolar talked about it. Chief St. John talked about mental health. And we are facing a mental health crisis. I'd love to share with you more about some of the initiatives we're coming up with. One is $10 million for beds for kids with acute need. We're also providing community-based court-ordered evaluation. Big deal is a lot of people are bogged down in the jail. We want to flow them, at least get them out so that they can continue on with their process. This is really I've heard from the judges, is a really important initiative. A couple others is investment in crisis teams, and that we're going to be investing this all throughout the state, as well as crisis curriculum. So these are 4 initiatives that already are coming out. I'm very hopeful. I'm also a realist. I'm very much aware of the challenges we face. This is not, unfortunately, a new rodeo. It's a challenge we're facing together. But Mayor, I took my 2-year-old daughter, bundled her up in a wagon on the south side where I live, and we went 4 miles around the south side. So I am not afraid. But I'm confident that with our city council, with you, Mayor, our city administrator, and our leaders, we will find a solution. So thank you for your hard work, and yes, thank you, audience, for sitting in those chairs as well.
Thank you, Representative.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, everyone. I think the chief and the mayor and others know I'm part of that Sellover era. George and I led the first mill levy 30 years ago, and I've participated and led several since. I'm really disappointed we don't have more cops in the street. I kind of thought that was going to be part of it. I can also tell you that if the jail I spoke about, you've heard it, it is the elephant in the room. You have to address it, Sheriff, you and the commissioners. But if you're going to ask the business community, and I'm looking at other people in the business community that have supported and paid for campaign after campaign, you need to tell us we need more cops. If we need 6 to 10 cops on the street, tell us. Shouldn't that be another initiative? I'm very disappointed that we don't have more cops on the street. We paid for it, we raised money for it, and the jail, and you've heard it from Dave Iron, Dave and I are working on a kind of a repeat of the sell-over thing. Because most people in the business, downtown included, by the way, we pay for those people, those police department, police members. Businesses pay for those, and it works, we're very proud of it. But we need more cops on the street. If we need another initiative, tell us. Well, business community is very frustrated over the lack of cops on the beat and no jail space. Thank you very much for having this. There are a whole bunch of other things that were incredibly important.
Very good, thank you. Anybody else? If so, make a little slide so we don't have any transition time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and others. I'm Representative Greg Oslander from House District 40. I appreciate this meeting tonight. It was very informative. There was a lot of good information. As I sat there with the questions that were being asked and so forth, it occurred to me that there's a lot of great ideas. There's a lot of huge needs within our community. We could probably list 50. But I'm going to challenge this group to look at 2 or 3 that you can focus on in the next 60 days that we think are immediate needs to make a difference right off the bat. And then another 2 or 3 that can happen in the next 120 days that not are going to get solved, but maybe more focus on those things so that we have 4 to 6 things in this community that the public knows you are working on, that we're working on, that we're trying to solve. We can get overwhelmed with the amount of stuff that is going on in this community. And everybody's talking about it. There isn't one person that I encounter that doesn't ask me questions. What can we do in our city? What can we do in our county? What can we do in the state to help these issues? And I think we have lots of good ideas, lots of good, smart people involved in this. So again, I'm going to challenge this group to focus on 2 or 3 things in the next 60 days to really get some energy or get some movement going, and 2 or 3 more in the next 120 days. And let's let the public know we're busy. We are trying to help this community. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any other public comment? Don't see anybody, so we'll close the public comment period using my gavel here. And on our agenda, and that is conclusion of our public safety discussion for item number 1. Our next item up is just a little bit of a forecast from our city administrator about upcoming agenda items. I don't know, Chris, whether you want to address that or not.
Primary thing I just say is you got a very important capital improvement plan for adoption. Next week's very different than this subject, but that's the single biggest item for holidays outside of this area of safety.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, we have an item, other item of council discussion. Is there anything? Councilor Ross.
I just want to ask again, what's next? Where do we go from here? Are we going to come back to this conversation? Are we going to convene another on prevention? Can we commit to some deadlines? Where do we go?
Council, we have no other work sessions in December. We're going to have 2 more business meetings. Our next 2 meetings are business meetings. So I guess it's my assumption that we will not come back to this issue in December. I would encourage, we can talk about that, but I would encourage, you've got the staff report with the 10 different items with various goals. We've only addressed 4. I would encourage everybody to look at those and start adding or subtracting, making comments back to Chris. That's still a staff level document at this point, so that list can be refined. That'd be my suggestion. But council, we will, Chris, can you give us a little bit of a specificity on council retreat when we have new council members on board, and how we will come back to address especially those other 6 items sooner rather than later, and by that I guess I assume January. Can you comment? Have you given us thoughts about the specific schedule?
So, yeah, we are trying to eat this elephant a bite at a time. I think where we sit today, as urgent as this is, I think that we don't have anything on the schedule before in this calendar year beyond tonight's discussion formally in community meetings. But January, hitting the ground, continuing to move issues forward. I'd also state, sure, as you did, Mayor, information we get from the council or the public in considerations. Tonight was not intended that we had all the strategies figured out, the action items, and the performance measures. It was the next step in this conversation. So, council, thanks to your initiative, right? The desire was to dedicate an evening like this. I think how many dedicated nights we want to have in January, February? We can do that. We just need to also recognize what are the things, something we're really bad at in government, just candidly, is taking stuff off the list. Resources are all going to be focused on this area, which they need to be. We need to acknowledge what else are we not going to do so that we can focus on this, both in your schedules and our schedules administratively. So I think we look at the calendar in January, whether it's those work sessions like this. Did you like this room? I know there's some deficiencies to this space, but it also allows the dialogue that we got to have tonight.
And prevention was an item we did not get to, and so I
We
guess.
know that one is a future
Yeah,
Mayor.
so I guess it'd be my assumption, we try to identify a date in January to do something similar, focused on prevention and maybe some of those other items. Think about maybe which of those.
8th or 22nd.
8th or the 22nd, Councilmember Carrington.
So your 30 days are done. You're not gonna get anything in 30 days, from what I'm seeing. But what I'm.
Mayor?
But the other thing that I see is that, okay, I don't know when the retreat's gonna be. Is that usually in February? It won't be in January. So unless these subcommittees can start working on, like Representative Oblander said, 2 or 3 items that are actions that we can do now. I think that's the whole point, where if we sit there and say, well, we're gonna look at this again, and then we're gonna look at it again, we're gonna have another committee, then that is the slowest moving piece to the puzzle. And I think that's where we're hoping that we can move forward. You know, the legislative committee could start working on some of these issues with legislators, with the attorneys, the prosecutors, the judges, and say, okay, what do you need, and let's start working on there. And that's exactly what Representative Yakowicz was talking about. We need to start working in January on those items. And that's where that legislative committee needs to start working now. So I think that's something to get together and start having those conversations. What the chief is, what we've asked of the chief as far as data, then that can be the now thing. So I think there are some certain actions that we could do within the next 30 days that would at least start that ball rolling, because if we wait until the retreat, then you've missed 2 months. So I'm just saying, I think sooner rather than later. I don't know that we need to keep looking at priorities and going through these lists. The lists are getting way too long, and they're not obtainable as far as I'm concerned.
I would reinforce the need to, as Representative Oblander said, focus. I think it's still good to have an expansive list, because then you know what to choose from, but you definitely need to focus on certain priorities. Councilmember Neese, did you want to comment?
I did, Mayor. My recommendation would be to not look at our regular schedule calendar. This is an issue that we as city leaders need to step up and make some time to address this issue. This was a great meeting, but as many of them, the people here said, we don't want to make this lip service. I think we need to have a special work session. There's no reason why we can't have a work session on a Tuesday after our Monday meetings to address this particular issue. We had some great ideas and topics, and then narrow them down and have something presented for the first of the year as far as a target of what we're going to get done in 30 and then maybe 60 days. And so I would like to see us add a special work session either this next week or the week after, before the end of the year. I don't think we should wait on this. And I would say at this point in time, hearing what we heard, I think there's times that the council itself needs to get together and talk. have some of the city officials, the city departments here that can help us with this, and then is to answer some questions and try and narrow down that 30-day, 60-day, 90-day list.
Okay, Chris, I don't know if you had a chance to look at work session agenda into January. Do you have any comments about the availability of time in January versus need for a special session in December? And then council, I want to hear from you.
Sorry, I don't have the draft agendas. I was off on the dates. I mean, we can put some special meetings in there, but the standard work sessions are 1st and 3rd. So January 2 and January 16th, because we got those holidays and we look first as we did tonight. This is the priority to push off anything else. It doesn't need to be, it's not at this urgent level. If there are urgent things that need to happen there, then we'll propose some additional dates for the council to put on their calendars and consider.
Council, okay, thank you. Council, the immediate issue is a special meeting in December. You've heard that suggested by Councilmember Neese. We'll try to identify one of these January 2nd or 6th work sessions for continuation, assuming the council does want to continue with the other items. Councilmember Trickey, had your hand up?
Not on that topic.
Okay. Other council members?
Mayor, I'd recommend the 12th or the 18th of December, if I'm looking at my calendar right. 12th or 19th, excuse me, 12th or 19th.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Boyette.
I was just wondering if we shouldn't do it in January, because I think it'd be nice to bring them in.
Good to see you.
It'd be nice to.
Thank you, Councilmember.
I'd be against a special session as well. We didn't get into this problem in 30 days, and we're not going to solve it in the next 30 days. So I think it makes a lot of sense to do it in January with our new council members. It's part of the discussion.
Okay. Other council members want to weigh in on that topic? Councilmember Trickey.
We did talk about this at the last time when we talked about this, and chose not to do it at that point. I'm not sure why we would change that decision at this point. I totally agree that, like, I'm one of the people that are not going to be at the table and in January when you have to start figuring this out. And you need to have those people at the table who are going to be making those decisions, being involved deeply in these conversations. So either move ahead the inauguration of these people or we'll wait until January.
Okay. Other council members want to weigh on that topic, because I'm hearing majority in favor of January, that's what I'm hearing. Councilmember Pierce.
I'll just put my pitch in for December as well, because just as you mentioned, some of us will be going off council. It would be good to involve the two new council members to come and be a part of the discussion. But yeah, I'm not for delaying it.
Okay. Council, it is a work session. We don't make decisions except to give direction to the city staff, but direction to schedule a special meeting would be probably appropriate for this meeting. Does somebody want to put that in the form of a motion? We heard two possible dates: the 12th, which would be Tuesday, 8 days from today, or the 19th, 7 days after that, also Tuesday. Councilmember Joy.
I move that we have our next public safety area of prevention discussion in January on the first available January date for a work session.
Okay, there was a motion. Councilor Boyette makes the second. We'll have a vote on that. I don't know that we need any discussion.
Yeah, just some discussion. I just came in 2 years ago, and I thought it was kind of nice to have our first session when we got inaugurated, that kind of stuff, in council chambers. And, for those two gentlemen that are going to be joining us, maybe we need to keep January 2nd there and have that discussion there and do it on the 16th instead of the 2nd. Again, that's
Friendly amendment, I'll accept that.
Okay, so we try to aim it for the 16th. Councilmember Boyette agrees with that. So that would be the direction. Councilmember Rowland.
I don't have a strong opinion when we meet. It doesn't matter. But I don't want us to leave anyone thinking, I certainly don't want any of us to think that we don't think about this or talk about this or work on this until we get together and have another meeting in the library.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a lot of work to do here. I'm fortunate. I get to work on this every single week through the CJCC. So I know how important it is that all of us who have been here tonight, great if we come back. I think we should come back, but I also think we have to work outside of council meetings on this. This is a priority.
Which is the point I was going to make very well, and can't make it any better. So don't let the grass grow under the moss or whatever it is that grows. We got plenty of things that we talked about that we can stay active on and continue to work on through emails and, with staff. So, okay, we'll have a vote. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Neese, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I did not make a motion to do in December because I didn't feel there was enough council support on that. And I felt that the city administrator would get it on the next work session.
Just cut him off.
Did we lose?
What's that?
Good job.
Oh, you're back. We can hear you.
Oh, you bet. I bet. Okay.
You're good.
And so I don't think we need to have a vote on this. If we're going to do anything, I then ask for a special session in January just to try and get this moved up because now we're talking over a month before anything is that we're even going to address this. And a lot of these people came out expecting us to do something and we're delaying. When we could take this seriously and have meet it a little bit sooner, even with the new council members. Earlier in January at a special work session. So I'm going to not support the motion only because I believe it needs to be done sooner.
Okay, Council, I'm hearing a consensus for January 16th. Councilor Neese is not pressing the special session, so we'll just deem that to be the direction to staff. Reinforce the need to continue to stay involved. And appreciate your discussion on all of that. With that, then we've got some marching orders. The other advantage of waiting is prevention especially involves some partners. And we don't know what their schedule would be. It'd be very short notice for them. And we brought this together fairly quickly. Hopefully with more time we can have a good structure, make sure that all the right partners are literally at the table for the 16th. So that's the plan. Chris, if that's clear to you, we'll move on. Yes.
I think we're out of time. I think our conversation in the upcoming weeks is, do you want that 16th to focus on the prevention conversation in the community or continuation of this conversation? And let's talk about that over the next few weeks.
Okay. It was my assumption it was the prevention we kind of move on, but there may be some revisiting, and not just prevention. There were other things. Councilor Bueller?
I maybe suggest that on the second that we have a check-in on just progress on things kind of related to this subject and maybe if there has been any additional metrics provided for some of these line items, just kind of review some of those things, but it's more it's not the open conversation like this. We leave that for prevention discussion on the 16th.
Definitely. Okay, very good. Councilor Roots, Councilor
Chris, could I just request you send this this PDF or whatever that was attached to the draft, send it out in Word format so we can respond back, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Councilor Trickey?
I just wanted to highlight 4 things that I heard tonight that I think deserve more attention. The bond issue that City Prosecutor Anderson brought up, I don't understand it, but it sounds like something that we need to be dealing with. And I would say that part of this process should be to go deep into our organization and say, hey, what are the other things that we're missing and that we need to do? The Opportunity School that Superintendent Garcia brought up, that is probably the next step in the long-term things that we need to deal with. We need to figure out some way to break that cycle, not at the family level after it's already happened, but before it even starts to happen. data systems. I won't get into why, but obviously we need better data systems in order to pull all of this stuff together and make it happen. And you're lucky, I forgot what the fourth one was.
Let me come back to you. Okay.
The PIO and getting a message out as soon as possible that that people need to start obeying the law, that we need to be very actively publicly messaging out there that it's not right to do dumb things.
Okay, thank you very much. Council, we still have public comment on non-agenda items. Anything else before I move to that? Okay, if anybody did want to comment on something that was not on our agenda tonight, our agenda allows for that now. Any public comment on something not on our agenda this evening?
Mayor, I just want to state thank you, and for those who are leaving, thank you for your service. This is their last meeting?
Nope.
One of their last meetings? I won't be here at the next
A couple
meeting.
business meetings.
But I just want to thank those who served and continue doing well. That's all, Mayor.
Thank you, much appreciated. Any other public comment on agenda items? Don't see anything, so with that, council, we are adjourned. Appreciate your patience. Members of the public, thank you for your patience and involvement.